We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We have a special surprise for Tom this week that
Yes.
he's going to be demonstrating right on the podcast. And for last week, there had several people discover the secret, discover the surprise. Some people did not, and were wondering what was going on. I just want to assure everybody. I mean, I suppose there's no way of truly fact-checking this, but I had absolutely no plans about my embarrassing purchase last week that I mentioned. I had no plans about.
I don't know why that's embarrassing.
Making it, well, because it's so irresponsible. But for making it a tease or anything like that, that was completely all on the fly, calling it audible, all that type of stuff. So there was no pre-planning in any of that. I completely assure you. Yes.
That's not what we do around here.
No,
we don't
pre-plan
things. That's not. Yes.
before.
And let's be honest here, Rob puts questions in order.
Yep.
And then he does a bunch of research so that he can answer the questions and sound super smart.
Sure.
And I show up. That's pretty much
when you're hearing them coming from Tom's lips. That is Tom's first exposure.
That is the first exposure to those questions. I think people don't believe that. I think they think there's like I don't know what about me makes you think that I would be dishonest in that way. Like there's lots of ways I could be dishonest,
I guess,
and that's honestly not one of them.
Nope.
So the weather is gorgeous in Florida right now.
Nice.
It is astonishing. It was this last Saturday I went cycling, and it was about 5 degrees colder Fahrenheit than it's 5 degrees past the lowest point I would ever consider cycling, and usually I don't consider cycling that. So it was like maybe almost 10 degrees cooler than I would have normally exited the house.
Okay.
But I had promised somebody I would go, and they were like, oh, and then at the last minute they're like, oh, it's really cold, and I know you don't have enough clothes, so whatever. And I was so miserable. But then that day, this is Florida for you, that day, it got warm enough that there was people in the pool
I believe it. Yep.
In my apartment complex. They may have been from Minnesota and didn't have like normal feeling things in their skin, but they certainly weren't Floridians, I'll tell you that much, because we don't. Yeah. The water has to be 70 degrees before we'll even consider getting in it. And I know that water is not 70 degrees. So, but now it's been 62 in the mornings, and it's just, you get out there, you start cycling, you're like, I'm a little bit cold, but that's perfect.
No,
that's perfect.
That's very pleasant. Yeah.
You'll warm up, and they'll warm up a little bit outside, and you'll warm up a little bit from all the exercise, and then it's just astonishingly
Why
nice.
is it 62 in the morning in December? That's
because this is why people move
if
here.
You're in the southern hemisphere, fine, but come on.
It's gorgeous. So I don't usually cycle on Tuesdays for a lot of reasons, but I don't usually cycle on Tuesdays, but I have to meet somebody at the house tomorrow morning when I would normally cycle to talk about other possible options. We haven't really talked about what's going on.
Not too much. No.
My stuff. And
any major updates on the house and the reconstruction?
There isn't really
and all of that?
a lot to say. To be honest, that's part of it. But also, that's all I talk about.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just all we talk about.
And this is a little bit of an escape from that. I understand.
And so is cycling. So if you cycle with me, you're like, oh, Tom, how's your house going? I will cycle faster to get away from you, because I don't want to talk about it. If I wanted to talk about it, I would have brought it up myself. But yes, so for those of you that are wondering, no movement at all. So we've talked a little bit about what's going on with this as far as here in Florida and the insurance industry and everything else. So there's all sorts of balls in the air as far as how things are actually going to work in the long. Like some people are just like, I know that I'm going to stay underneath this imaginary number that they came up with, that if I exceed this, I can't get insurance on my house anymore. So I'm just doing my stuff and then I'll deal with it later. Some people are like, I know I'm going way over, and therefore I have to make another decision. And we're kind of on the line as far as that. There's this, this number that you cannot exceed as far as spending on your house. And it used to be in a group of permits or in a permit. So, if you're like, okay, well, I want to add on to my house. I want to make my house twice as big. It's too expensive. You can't do that. So what you would do is you pull a permit for like a bedroom and a bath, and you add that on. You get that permit closed. Then you open a new permit for, another, room, and then you do that construction and get that permit closed.
I see.
And then you keep doing that until you get all the stuff you want. But because of what's going on here, yeah, it's very stupid. Because of what's going on here, they're like, oh, it's going to be like a calendar year. So within the all the permits within the calendar year all have to add up to less than this imaginary magic number that they came up with. So we have to worry about that number quite a bit because not only do we have the damage from Helene, which is extensive, but we also have damage from Milton, which is, a tree falling on the house. And
it doesn't matter that those were two separate events. It's like everything combined.
Everything combined.
I mean, I can't pretend I actually understand what's going on here. Like,
it's very confusing, and it changes constantly. Okay. So we have to be extremely careful with what we do. So we are exploring literally every option, from selling as is and letting somebody else deal with it, and then keeping all the insurance money, which is not a good idea because we will get maybe half of the value of our home before the storm. If we do that. To maybe knocking down the house, building a new one, not planning on living there, but just building it and then selling it.
But clearly going over that number if you do that.
But if we do that, because you're building a new house, it'll be up to code and it won't apply.
Like I'm not saying that in any way that you've overlooked something. I'm just like, in my pure looking at it from far away logical mind,
Canada.
I'm like, why wouldn't the insurance pay to get your house back to the way it was? Like, no betterments. Okay, betterments, that's on you.
Yeah,
but
they will.
Okay, but why would that put you over the number?
Because that's a completely separate thing.
See, that's the part I'm like, I don't... How you bought insurance. The insurance says your house gets damaged. We put your house back to how it was before.
Here's your money to fix it. But if you spend that money on the house to fix it...
Yeah.
The city and the county who pulls the permits for you, or who allows you to pull permits?
You're just putting it back to the way it was.
You still have to pull permits. Yes, you're right. Many places you do not have to pull permits to return it to
return it to how it was. Yeah.
Yes, but here you do because of a lot of people decide they're going to move walls and do a bunch of other stuff.
Well, if you're going to move walls, if you're going to do betterments, if you're going to make changes, then of course you would need to pull permits and have budgets.
If anybody is feeling like Rob is on the right side of this and that I am somehow against him, please.
No. And I'm not trying to argue with Tom in any way.
We are all in agreement that this is stupid. The whole thing is stupid, but we have to work within the rules of the area in which we live. So we are exploring all these options. So tomorrow, I know it's Tuesday, right? Yeah. So tomorrow I'm meeting with, or my wife and I both are meeting with like a builder who's going to come on and look at the property and go, okay, this is how much it would cost to knock down this house and pull out this massive tree in your backyard and then put a big old freaking McMansion on it.
Oh, okay.
And then which would be up to code and therefore would not apply for FEMA because it would not be in a flood zone anymore because the house is high enough that the living space is above the flood zone. Therefore, you don't have to have flood insurance, which means FEMA doesn't care what you do. You can spend as much money as you want. And then how much it's going to cost to build this house, then also how much would you be able to sell it for afterwards?
Right.
Because understand that across the street from us, we have houses that are selling, that they're brand new construction above the flood zone or blah, 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 on lots that are almost half of our size, just a little bit bigger than half of our size lot that are selling for $1.2 million. So we're thinking, well, if we can subdivide our lot, which we don't think we can, but we might be able to, and then... It's like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's a lot. And this conversation has gone on for 5 minutes and you're like, this is dumb and I'm confused. This is everything. So what's happening with my house is that nothing has happened with my house.
Gotcha.
It is clean. And by clean, I mean it does not have mold in it.
Right.
All the drywall's been taken out. It's been treated,
and the sewage flooding is gone.
That's all. All that stuff is taken care of, except for they're supposed to be doing some stuff to the tile, but they didn't do it. But they said they did, and now we have to talk to them about that. But there's basically, the house is sitting there waiting for us to make a decision.
Right.
So if you can think of it from everybody else's perspective, forgetting all these rules and everything else, pretend you want to redo your kitchen or your bathroom or something like that. And you're talking to, architects, you're talking to interior designers, you're talking to contractors, you're talking to specialists, you're talking to, and then you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe we should just GC it ourselves because I can hire an electrician to go in there and do the electricity. I can hire a tile guy to do but then it's a lot of work on your part. This is, we're considering, and then you're also thinking, well, do I really need another bathroom? Maybe I'll just knock the whole house down and build one that has the bathroom that I wanted.
Yeah.
This is sort of what we're going through right now.
Uh-huh.
So, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not going to prompt it any further because we got lots of actual home theater to get to this week. So I'll leave it there. But yes, that's for everyone who was wondering, and people have been wondering. So that's the update. It is clear.
I wish I could tell you that something was happening, but believe me, when something happens, it's going to happen like fast.
Okay.
Pretty much. We'll make that decision. We'll crunch all the numbers. Everything, we'll get our insurance money in.
Yeah.
And everything will go forward quickly.
Yeah.
But until then, it is a huge waiting game of us collecting enough data to end up with something that we, or just collecting enough data for us to make this decision. The reality is our neighborhood, and I know it got absolutely ravaged by the storm. Our neighborhood as a whole has to be rebuilt. Like every house in our neighborhood will be knocked down if it hasn't already, and rebuilt up to code so that it's above the floodplain.
Right.
And those houses are those houses are going to be worth just buku dollars because it is an extremely desirable neighborhood to live in. It is very close to downtown St. Pete. It is in this sort of, a lot of the houses are on bayous or on like canals where you can get boats in and out. People have boat lifts in their backyards. We don't. We're not on the water, but you're close to all of that. And not only that, while this doesn't sound like much of a draw, the reality is our neighborhood is a maze. Like you get in there, like people like go out on the main drag, which is 4th Street. Yeah, 4th Street. And they'll, do crime. Right. And then they'll run away from the police as the police are chasing them, and they'll take a wrong turn and they'll come into our neighborhood, and the police are just like, we'll wait. And there's just 3 entrances to the entire neighborhood, only 2 of which anybody knows about because one of them's it's kind of like a weird twisty way. And the cops will just sit there and wait for these guys to just be like, we can't get out. It's a maze. You can't get out, which does mean that cars don't drive very fast around here.
Good. Yeah.
There's tons of little nooks and crannies. Neighbors. We're all, we all kind of know each other. And this neighborhood's never really good. So if we had sold right beforehand, we could buy a house that was the size that we would want in another neighborhood that wasn't quite as desirable and pocket a bunch of money. But now because of this, we have to make this big decision about. Yeah. Because if we sell the land as is, where the land is the most expensive part of it, but it doesn't sell for what it's.
No. You want to have a domicile on it when you're selling.
Right.
So
we've got a lot of stuff to do. So you're right. Well, let's not talk about this endlessly. I guess do you want me to open this thing first, or you want to do let's do the while we watched. What we watched because I didn't watch anything again.
You didn't watch anything yet again, so 2 movies this week. I haven't started any new series. I'm letting Arcane.
The Star Wars one looks interesting.
It does look interesting, yeah, but I'm letting Arcane just simmer in my mind and been thinking about that for a while, but won't be any more of those for years and years to come. So this week, watched 2 movies. First one I saw, I had never actually watched this movie, despite it having come out back in 1997 and having had an interest in it and it looking good all the time. That was Anastasia, the animated 20th Century Fox that was done very much in the Disney animation style.
I thought that was Disney. It's not Disney?
Well, it shows up on Disney Plus now because Disney bought Fox, but that was 20th. That was 20th Century Fox that released Anastasia, but everyone thought it was Disney because it looks like Disney.
I feel like I saw that. I feel like I saw it.
Well, I know for a fact I had never sat down and watched that thing from beginning to end as an actual movie experience. I don't really know why. I wasn't trying to avoid it for any particular reason. But yeah, beautiful animation, beautiful hand-drawn 2D animation, and they spent the money on the budget. Like all the backgrounds, elaborate, ornate backgrounds and background animation and that. I mean, the money is there on screen. There's the few little segments that were clearly done with the very early computer animation as they're just sort of going through some of the buildings and that. In Russia, I think it's St. Petersburg that it is set there in Russia. So, I mean, really gorgeous. I will say the voice acting I thought was top notch. I thought it was really good voice acting. I really liked these characters, and it was very enjoyable. So, I mean, they tried to do the complete Disney-style thing of the really over-the-top theatrical villain, which is Rasputin in this story. Very much the supernatural ability version of Rasputin in this. And he was fine, as although he was kind of not in the movie very much, so you almost kind of forgot that there was a villain in this movie for spells at a time. But they gave him what's supposed to be the funny little sidekick Bat character, and I found him just plain a little bit annoying. It was a little bit too over the top. Kind of went past the Disney style when they did that. And then the songs, I'm like, well, they didn't quite hit the Disney quality of songs. That was the little bit of a shortcoming, if there were any, in this movie. I can't say I'm really remembering or humming any of those tunes afterwards, and they had a little bit of a generic sound to them, a little bit of a generic quality as far as the melodies went, and that was the part that didn't quite live up to the Disney standards there. So there's something there, because they weren't like incompetent in any way. They were perfectly reasonable, serviceable songs, but just not really that catchy or memorable. But I certainly give it a thumbs up. If you've never watched it, I'm like, hey, that was really beautiful 2D animation if you want to go back to that style. So, yeah. You sounded like you had something to say there on that? Or something else?
Yeah, I do feel like I saw that movie, but I can't remember a thing about it. So there you go.
Yeah, there was a live action 1957 Anastasia, which had a not completely dissimilar story. So yeah, I don't know if that was the thing. So the other movie that I watched this week was Smile 2. So this is a sequel, of course, to Smile, the horror movie that garnered quite a bit of praise. Smile 2 has garnered quite a bit of praise, and I really dug this movie.
Really?
I thought it was excellent. And similar to the original Smile 1, the lead actress, I'm forgetting her name now, she's not a super memorable actress in the original Smile. Smile 2 is Naomi Scott. She's the one who starred as the live-action version of Jasmine in the live-action Aladdin. She was the new Kimberly Hart in the most recent Power Rangers movie that was supposed to have a sequel but isn't going to happen anymore. And she's been in many other things. She's also a singer in real life, a pop singer in real life. So she's playing a super famous pop star in Smile 2. And as many people have pointed out in other reviews and comments, it's like whenever you have a fictitious pop star, like you don't take a real life, Ariana Grande or something and put her into the movie as basically herself. When you take a completely fictitious, made up global pop star, it's usually it doesn't quite work in the movie. Usually they're not fully believable, but Naomi Scott is herself talented enough, and then everything they did in this movie is no, I can believe. I can believe that Sky, whatever her name is, Sky Riley in this movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that could be a modern day pop star. She pulls that off 100%. Naomi Scott is acting straight to camera for I don't know, 75% of this movie. It's almost like going back to Stanley Kubrick style. The camera is just square right on her face. You're getting her reaction to everything. And if that didn't work, this movie is a complete failure, but she is so good. She is so good in this movie. And this movie is her. It's her.
She's on the cover thing, right? She's on the thumbnail on Hulu or wherever it is.
Yeah. So I mean, it's her face.
I keep thinking she's the same actress as that was in the actor that was in Dexter. That was the sister.
No,
in Dexter, she looks that way from just that.
Oh no. Once you see them in action, you definitely tell them apart.
Sure.
But no, she is so fantastic in this movie. It is a stand-up performance, and everyone is always saying she's so good in everything she does. She's a fantastic singer. Why isn't she more famous and well known than she is, because like it doesn't quite make sense. But it's another one of those things. You see her in interviews, and there she is speaking with her British accent. You would never guess that she's British. Her American accent is fantastic, and you would never ever guess that. So I mean, just absolute standout performance from her in this. Smile 2 has a lot more humorous moments. It gives you a lot more moments to relieve the tension of this movie, which is really good. It's really well done throughout, but they give you those moments to relieve the tension. It's intentional. You're not laughing at what's going on. You're meant to have that little bit of a release. They do that on purpose. And I mean, it's dark humor stuff. It's morbid humor stuff. Like there's one moment where so the whole thing with Smile 2 is there's basically a demon that's transferring from people to people. You don't really know what's going on with this thing, but once it's gotten a hold of someone, they can't really tell what's real and what's not anymore.
Right.
They're seeing stuff, and then so we're going along with them, and it's like, well, did that really happen? And then it's like, so they witnessed someone getting killed, but then it turns out they were holding the knife. It's that type of thing, or nothing actually happened. They imagine the entire thing, but they can't tell.
The second Blair Witch Project kind of was like that. Where they couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't.
I mean, it's definitely that unreliable narrator, all that sort of thing. So, I mean, one of the humorous ones that I'll mention is like, she's witnessing someone that she thinks has killed themselves, and then you're not quite sure. Maybe she actually killed them. It's like not really, but regardless, she ends up covered head to toe in blood, and she like quickly tries to wipe it off and like puts new clothes over top of her blood-soaked clothes, and she's trying to escape. But it's like, she basically forgot that like the bottom half of her body was also covered in blood. So it's like, you really didn't do a good job of covering up your crime. But it's like, it's that type of humor, but it absolutely works. And I don't know. The very, very end of the movie, I was like, I don't know if I loved it. It could have maybe the very, very, very end, I maybe could have ended in a way that would have put it even more over the top for me. But I'm like, I will excuse the last 10 seconds for how good the entirety of this movie was, for how good her performance was. A huge thumbs up from me. If you're at all a horror fan, the jump scares are really effective. They did some really creative new style jump scares that I very much appreciated. There's the classic, you're sort of staring at someone's face while they're sleeping, and it's like, they're going to open their eyes suddenly, or that something is going to jump in from off screen, something like that. No, they did a completely novel jump scare that I have not seen before, and it's like, it's not that the jump scare didn't come, it's just it was really unexpected. I'm like, hey, good job.
That's hard.
On how it is hard with so much having been done these days. So yeah, fantastic. Her like complete breakdown crying scene, I'm like, whoa. there's some like Oscar worthy acting. And then her she's like supposed to be giving a speech, and her teleprompter breaks, so she starts going off script, and I'm just like, was like, I don't know if Naomi Scott's personal experience in the music industry, but I'm like, that seemed a little too real. Like, it seemed like she was pulling on some genuine stuff there. So yeah, it's a fantastic movie. See Smile 2. It's great.
Yes, I did not watch anything again this week. We had a holiday party to go to, and then my son had what did he have? Some sort of robotics competition.
Okay.
That he was a part of. So it's one thing or another around here. Mm-hmm. So the only thing we've been watching for the most part has been Ocean X or something like that. It's on Disney. It's like the Nat Geo channel on Disney, and it's James Cameron narrating, and I'm sure paying for a lot of this. So why else would they let him narrate?
He does like his ocean exploration.
Because he is not a great narrator, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, he's not bad. He's not bad, but there's a reason why people get paid to do these things.
For sure.
And he's okay.
Of the many skills that man does have.
He does.
Narration, no maybe not the top one. Okay.
I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying that if you had... If he wasn't James Cameron, he would not have gotten the job.
If it were one of the Attenboroughs or Morgan Freeman or something, might have elevated it a little bit.
Might be, a little bit elevated. Right. But it's almost formulaic in how this show is laid out. But they're doing ocean research, and every episode is like, we've never seen this before. It's the most amazing thing. I'm like, Is it though? I'm not saying that it's not, and I'm sure it is very important research that you're doing, and I'm very excited for you. But at the same time, it can't always be
didn't fully come across on screen. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shark swimming around, and you guys are making a bunch of stuff about
Speaking of water, just before we leave our What We Watch section there, it just reminded me that in Smile 2, I don't know how much water Naomi Scott had to drink during the filming of this movie, but at multiple times she just like guzzles an entire bottled water, and I'm like, how many takes did you have to do? Because I'm worried about you at this point. I'm like, I'm assuming you had
She's
a prop.
hydrated.
I'm assuming you had a prop that made it look like there was more water in that bottle than there really was, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it kind of just looked like a normal bottle of water that you guzzled in one take really, really quickly, and she did it multiple times in this movie. And I'm like, I hope that was one take at a time, because that seemed scary in real life.
All right. Let's get to the podcast.
Yeah.
This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to the website, find our episodes, our show notes, our Flickr album, so you can follow along the pictures that we will be referencing. You can also find our older shows. There's a couple of them. I mean, we're on 946.
Right.
So
yep.
There's
just a few.
Couple.
A few pages when it says older entries that you can click that button a handful of times. That's for sure.
3 or 4 times.
Right.
And then you get to the end. And you're like, oh, that's number 1. I'll listen to the first one.
AVRant.com.
Where's Rob? Oh, he's in the comments.
Right.
Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. YouTube.com/AVRant. You can see our recording episodes, our recording sessions there. And also, the pictures will be integrated into the video so that you won't have to find them.
If you want to see them in real time as we're talking about them, we have our Flickr album for the audio-only version that you can check out, or if you just want to see the collection of photos that were in any episode all together at one place. But during YouTube, we do put up the images as we're talking about them. That's one way to do it.
That's right. That was an Amazon driver.
Of course.
All right. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom@avrant.com.
That's right.
All right, for our listeners of the week, to become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. So this week, we had Bill who did that. Thank you very much, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, thank you for that PayPal donation. Very nice of you and generous. And that money is all going to support Tom and his family right now through PayPal. So it is very much appreciated. Thank you, Bill.
It is another Amazon driver. I feel like you guys should have maybe coordinated a little bit. Did I tell you that we are across the street from like where they park all the Amazon trucks in our neighborhood, in our area? Wow. Like there's a huge parking lot for this. It used to be a dog track where they'd race dogs, and they outlawed dog racing for very obvious reasons. But now they have a huge parking lot that just services this poker room. That's the only thing left in that building. And they rent it out to Amazon. Amazon parks all their trucks. So whenever you get like a little thing where it says it'll deliver between this time and this time, and it's really early in the morning, I am getting it first. They drive across the street and they drop it off. Like I've had them drop it off before I've left for cycling at 7 a.m. I'm like, geez, you guys are early. Patreon. If you want to support us monthly, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast and sign up to be a monthly supporter. Every month they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us, a minimum of $1.
That's right.
Right now we have 133 patrons, which is up from 130 last episode.
It's back to where it used to be a month ago.
They all updated their credit cards.
That's what it was. Yep. But that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
They probably all have wives like mine who lose their cards constantly and then have to cancel them all, even though they immediately find them in their car afterwards. And now your card gets changed every couple of months. So, Patreon.
That's right. Thank you to our 133 patrons.
133. If you can't support us financially, do something else and let us know what it is. Infinite Gary sent a whole bunch of movie codes for me to test for him, which is really me helping him. He calls it a holiday bundle, and I did not check my email until the beginning of this podcast. So it has been busy around here.
It was forwarded to you. We'll find it.
Yes, and I did see it. I actually have it open, and I'm going to test those for you, Gary, right after this podcast. So thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary, for those codes for Tom.
Ilango also sent some movie codes, only a few only valid in Canada, one for movies anywhere in the States, so I'll be testing that out.
You'll be testing that one out. I can say that one of the codes worked, and two of them didn't. They were already redeemed, so somewhere back in the past there, either Ilango himself, or maybe he got them elsewhere, and that's what the testing service is all about. That's the service we provide.
We provide a service for you so that you know whether or not your codes will work.
That's right.
George sent a Denon X4000 receiver to me, and that arrived. And
that's right.
Shockingly enough, on the exact same day, but later in the day, Dan's shipped his very heavy NAD receiver to me. It's so much heavier than the X4000. It is It really very much feels like a joke. You know what I mean? There's like no reason why that either one is far too light to be a receiver, or one is far too heavy. Like I don't know what is like. It's messing up my calibration for how much receiver should weigh.
I see,
because that NAD receiver is ludicrous. I expected it to weigh a certain amount, and I grabbed the box and I pulled on it, and it didn't move. And I was like, "Oh!" I had to like brace my legs to pick this thing up.
Dan did have other things in the box because they all came in one box together. So that wasn't the weight of the shipping box was not 100% the AV receiver, but the AV receiver itself is a hefty boy. Yeah.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah. And he also said something else, which we're going to open in just a second. I have not seen it yet.
Okay,
but
it's a surprise.
It is right to my right. So I will be opening that momentarily. So first of all, thanks, George. Thanks, Dan, for the receivers.
Yeah, thank you, George. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Ilango, too. I forgot to say.
I will either make use of them personally, or I will find somebody who has also been in my same situation and needs to replenish their home theaters, and I will pass them along. But for now, I'm using everything myself. Galen bought some SVS Prime Series speakers and told SVS it was because of our recommendation. So thank you, Galen.
Yeah, thank you for talking us up, Galen. Appreciate that.
And Ilango gave permission for me to use his photos on avgadgets.com, where I am the editor-in-chief, even though I haven't put basically since Helene that I have that site has been dormant right now, just because I just don't.
Oh yeah, no, we
I just don't have the I just don't have the bandwidth.
But hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll come back one day. So
it will.
So when it does, you might make use of some of Ilango's photos because he has given permission for you to use those in perpetuity. He won't sue you for putting them on the website.
Thank you very much, Ilango.
That's right.
We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Ryan, Dan, Mohsen, Chris, Travis, Karl. Karl confirmed himself as a 2-hour plus club member.
Oh, he sure did. Yeah.
Also, Karl and his wife do not always sit in the front row of every theater. This is me making a face, because that's what I said. It's insane. If it's our local Dolby Cinema or Laser IMAX, they'll sit all the way in the back.
No, not all the way in the back. All the way back in
the third row.
The third row, yes.
Front row is still fine if the third row is sold out, though. They'd rather move closer to the screen than farther away, and they do pick the front row for the Violet Crown and Austin Film Society cinemas. I don't know what that is. At the Alamo Draft House, they always go for the second row. So if you know what any of those places are, it doesn't make any difference. It's all too close.
Get your eyes very checked. Close, yes.
Jack, who said the original 2-hour plus club secret word, but didn't mention our newest secret. Drew, the earliest confirmed 2-hour plus club member on YouTube. Ryan took a lot of prodding in the YouTube comments, but eventually became a 2-hour plus club member. Infinite Gary confirmed his 2-hour plus club membership.
Yep.
Dan confirmed his 2-hour plus club membership. Dazz. Ilango confirmed his, and John confirmed his after a little prompting on Blue Sky. So say those names again.
Okay.
Ryan, Dan, Mohsen, Chris, Travis, Karl, Jack, Drew, Ryan, Infinite Gary, Dazz, Ilango, and John. Thank you for thanking us.
And I'll say the names one more time. Ryan, Dan, Mohsen, Chris, Tanev, Karl, Jack, Drew, Ryan, Infinite Gary, Dazz, Ilango, and John. The reason we're mentioning all those 2-hour plus club members, there was people have been saying, when are you going to have an updated? I've been listening for a while, but it's been a long time since you had a secret words at the end of an episode. I want to prove that I'm part of it, and you had the opportunity. We didn't make a big deal about it, but some people discovered it on their own. They really are genuine 2-hour plus club members.
So Dan included with his NAD receiver something else.
Okay, here we go.
If you're on YouTube,
yes,
you're seeing this, and if you're not, you're hearing it. It is wrapped in bubble wrap, and I have cut the tape so that I can get it open. Mostly cut the tape so that I can get it open a little bit easier.
Yep.
So I'm going to open it now.
It's a live surprise on the show happening right now in real time. You can see it happening.
So this is a cheese board, it looks like.
It sure is. There's even a little image of a piece of cheese on the front there.
That's what gave it away.
That's
I was
what
like,
gave it away.
I thought it was for hanging on the wall, and I saw the cheese and went, huh? And I looked at the back, and it's got little feet on the back.
Yep.
And it's got the AVRant logo.
It sure does.
You guys can see this. It looks like it's like laser etched in here.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's burned
got,
in.
A cherry, grapes.
It's got to be grapes, right? Grapes to go along with the cheese?
Olives? I think I'm going to go with olives. I think olives and cheese go better than grapes and cheese, but maybe there's just grapes. Either way. So there's cheese on the other side. And then on the back, it's got some feet, and it says this. Glad you and your family are getting back on your feet. This cheese board is made from an applewood tree that came from NH, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, I would think. Yeah, yeah.
Keep on fighting the good fight. Your friend in the Northeast, Dan, a.k.a. Skippy Turtle. So thank you very much, Dan. It's Mr. Skippy Turtle. And thank you for this. This is awesome. My wife is... I don't know. Will I wrap it? I think maybe I'll wrap it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll wrap it. And I'll give it to myself or give it to my wife. I don't know. That's because so believe me, Christmas this year is like, you don't have any more T-shirts.
Right.
All of your shoes were ruined in the flood, so let's go shoe shopping. So far, that's kind of been how it's been. I took my eldest son to go buy tennis shoes on Sunday because I was like, listen, your shoes are terrible. And he's like, well, my other shoes got flooded. I'm like, I know. Let's go get you some new shoes.
Yeah.
So, this Christmas is going to be very unexciting. This is really, really nice. Thank you, Dan. There's no way I would have expected this. And it's got the AVRant logo etched in there. It looks great. It looks great.
Thank you, Dan. That is a lovely surprise.
Thank you, Dan. It's a very nice surprise. All right. Now I'm all verklempt. I'm teared up. I'm teared up over here. I'm very emotional. All right. In the news, Ascend Acoustics has released their HTM-200SE2 mini monitor speakers to replace the HTM-200SE. So
200 SE. They went from the 200 SE to the 200 SE2.
I don't know. Kind of like the version 2 or something. I think of that. That's kind of all right. Whatever. The price for the pair has increased by $30 to $368 a pair. A single horizontal version can be purchased for $208. Odd number, but okay.
He always likes to put an 8 at the end, does Dave Fabricant over at Ascend. It always ends in an 8.
So isn't the 8 like a super lucky number in some Asian cultures or
certainly
something?
In China, they like to have the 8s. Some other cultures do as well, but it's very, very popular in China. I don't know if that's the reason behind it, though. No idea.
I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Okay, so a single horizontal version can be purchased for $208 all by itself, but that gets reduced to $180 if you buy it with at least one other pair of Ascend speakers.
Yeah. Being
part of the SE2 series, the HTM-200SE2 has been fully Klippel optimized. That now leaves the CBM-170SE as the only speaker model in Ascend's lineup that has not been Klippel optimized and updated. And once you know it, the CBM-170SE is also the only Ascend speaker that's on sale right now for 22% off.
Yep. So, scratching of the chin there. Can we put some 2 and 2 together? Yes.
No. Man, see, if it wasn't for the 208 thing, which is weird, then I would think that the 22% would be so that it would go down to like a reasonable number and not something weird.
Sure.
But whatever. All right. So compared to the discounted HTM-200SE, the SE2 has the exact same cabinet dimensions of 11 by 6.5 by 6 3/8 inch deep. Mm-hmm. But the cabinet has been updated to be seamless in its sealed design, with everything on its front face totally flush to the surface. There are recessed binding posts in the back, along with a pair of threaded inserts for easy wall mounting. And an optional flush wall mount is available for $10 each. You can barely get a coffee for $10.
I know. That's not too bad. Yeah,
that is a pretty
those flush mounts
cheap
on
price.
there is pretty reasonable. Yes, that's right.
I almost say increase the price of the speaker by $10 and just include them, but that's just me.
Right? Yeah.
I don't really feel like that'd be a good. So the 1-inch tweeter is custom made by Seas, and it is offset and in between a pair of 4-inch polygel woofers. The nested design is meant to provide wide, even dispersion both horizontally and vertically, so it doesn't particularly matter how the speaker is oriented. And the Sen's old Klippel measurements bear that out, indicating even dispersion both horizontally and vertically out to around plus or minus 45 degrees in any direction. They claim 50 degrees, but definitely 45. So there you go.
For sure. If you're sticking to the red portions of those colored contour plots that they measure themselves, then interestingly enough, so like this is with the speaker positioned vertically, so then you're looking at the vertical dispersion. So this is like the woofer on top, tweeter below that, other woofer below that. That's actually the most even dispersion. So if you turn this speaker horizontally to use it as a center, you've got actually very even side-to-side dispersion at that point with it turned horizontally. But the point is, there's a little bit of wiggliness in the directivity between about 2 and 7 kilohertz. You don't have flawless response there, but once they put it all together with what they call their estimated in-room response, which is both on and off axis combined, because of course when you're hearing it with your human ears, you don't actually get to separate at degrees at a time and hear them individually. You hear the combined response of the on and off axis and reflections together, and there you have very linear response at a wide variety of angles. So they're very proud of that Klippel optimized response. I think they should be. I was a big fan of the HTM-200SE speakers to begin with. The SE2s have been further refined.
Why don't we ever talk about Ascend on this podcast?
I know,
It's a real question. It's very confusing. We don't talk about Ascend. We don't talk about SVS. I mean, we don't. We're just all about those esoteric speaker companies.
Yes.
Sensitivity is rated at 86 dB, although the Klippel measurements indicate that 85 dB might be a bit more accurate. And power handling is unusually high for a speaker of this size and price, and at a rated 200 watts continuous into 8 ohms. Again, Klippel measurements indicate it should probably be rated as a 6 ohm speaker with 4 ohm minimum impedance. So there you go. And they only come in black, and they're available for shipping right now. So all you people who are like, I want to spend money on something, and I have the HTM-200SEs. Now you have something to buy.
You can upgrade them. That's right.
You can upgrade them for very little sonic improvement. but I mean, now you don't have to tow them in as much.
The CMT-340SEs, which are the large stand-mounted version in the Signature series and the SE2 series, like if you're looking for speakers that can play really, really loud, with really, really high power handling and higher than above average efficiency as well at a very reasonable price. Now the HTM-200SE2s, if you're using those as your wall-mounted surrounds or ceiling-mounted overhead speakers, it's like that all matches really nicely. Now you can get a remarkably high output, higher than average sensitivity, but very affordable speaker system from Ascend with these. So I'm a big fan, and I'm sure the CBM 170 SE2s are on their way. I have no doubt of that.
I will tell you, I have scanned this question.
Okay.
And there is zero chance I'm going to say these words correctly. The first chance. The first
we haven't
attempt.
done our second news story, so I'm not sure if you're...
that's the second news story I'm talking about.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So Auro-3D has been acquired by the group that owns Dynaudio. That is the easiest sentence in all of this.
Gotcha.
In case you're wondering. Goerdyna Group operates Libretone. So got that far. That's how far I got before I messed up. Libretone, XEO, Dynaudio, and now Auro-3D. They've created a separate subsidiary, Goerdyna BV, with the former CEO of New Auro carrying on as the new CEO of Goerdyna BV. Stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what the BV stands for. It's initialized. I don't know what it stands for.
Anyways, existing new Auro IP contracts and key personnel will transition over to the new headquarters in Belgium. So move or get fired.
Yep.
So what does this mean? It doesn't mean. I don't know.
I just threw it in the news because, I mean, some people really, really care about Auro-3D, and they were wondering what was going to become of it because they... I don't know if there was bankruptcy protection or whatever.
What? It's still dead. It's going to be dead. You're never going to hear from it again. It's dead.
But if you've heard of Dynaudio, which many people have, the people who own Dynaudio, they own Auro-3D now. That's the
I don't know
news.
any of these other companies.
Yeah.
Libratone, I feel like I've heard
of. Yeah.
Yeah, but XEO,
I don't know what that is.
that sounds like a Korean pop group.
And I didn't know the Goerdyna Group were the owners of Dynaudio. I'm assuming the Dyna part of that name came from Dynaudio, but there it is.
That sounds like a villain in a Marvel movie. Goerdyna.
Could be.
Anywho, so Auro-3D is still dead. Comments. Alan. Last week we detailed Mark, the Wood Whisperers, which is funny that this didn't come from the Wood Whisperer.
It didn't. That's right. Yeah.
It's just throwing me off.
Different person.
I keep looking at it though. It's so smooth.
Oh, nice.
It's
that
so
I can't
nice.
tell from
and
images.
the grain on this is just astonishing.
Very nice.
Anywho, we detailed Mark's basement setup. Since Mark ended up removing his electric fireplace entirely and running speaker wires to all locations after all, Alan's correction that he has for us is moot for Mark's specific situation now, but it could still apply for other people. So... We had previously said there was no way to use subwoofers other than Sonos' own subs with a Sonos home theater setup. We had also said that there was no way to use a pair of bookshelf speakers as a front, left, and right while using Sonos speakers for the remaining positions. Well, we are correct that the system is all based off using one of Sonos' sound bars up front, but there's an alternative. You can use two Sonos amp units together, and the Sonos amp has a subwoofer RC jack. So you can create a 4.2 Sonos system using your own bookshelf speakers and your own subwoofers. He says he's installed lots of 4.1 and 4.2 Sonos setups for his clients this way. So he wanted to mention it as a potential Sonos solution to keep in mind for the future. I think that's a phenomenally great idea, to be honest with you. I think this is how, at least in my mind, Sonos makes sense. I mean, I love Sonos for almost everybody, because my family is all Apple except for me. My wife's mad at me. She Apple tagged me, by the way, for Christmas, early Christmas present. I got Apple tagged. So now I have Apple tags on my keys, and I'm supposed to carry them with me when I cycle, which is fine, actually, because I no longer get calls from her wondering when I'm going to be home. She can now look me up on her phone and go, there he is. He's that far from where he's going to be.
Being tracked.
And I love it. People are like, I don't want the government to track me. Please track me. Please recommend products to me that I might like. Thank you. But Sonos, for most people, is that sort of turnkey, really cares about the UI.
Well, people would argue about that with the app update that broke everything. But,
okay. I'm not saying they haven't had any hiccups or missteps along the way. But the idea is that the whole thing's supposed to be very user friendly. And I'm okay with people like buying into an ecosystem, because unlike most of the people who listen to this podcast, I know this is going to come as a shock for you. People don't like to upgrade. They like to buy a thing and then die with it, or until it dies, and they buy a new thing. And they are fully expecting to get rid of everything, or half. They potentially are like, well, when one speaker in the system dies, I'm probably going to have to buy a whole new setup. Unlike you, who are like, if my subwoofer goes, I'll just get a new one and plug it in and recalibrate, and I'm good to go. Most people don't think that way. So Sonos to me makes sense. And this is a way of getting a more better sounding system with while
You're
still
not
staying
locked
within
into their own speakers.
A
couple things here. So I mean, it doesn't have the ability to have a dedicated center speaker. So I mean, we're the ones who argue that Phantom Center works very, very well in many, many setups. But
and not
if
only
you didn't
that,
want
people put their speakers so close to their dang TVs anyways. What's the center channel doing?
Yeah.
What is it really doing?
This configuration, it won't do Atmos. That's not going to be part of this. So if you wanted the Sonos Arc or Arc Ultra that's out there now, you can have the simulated Atmos, because it isn't really even up firing. It's definitely not speakers physically above you, and it's not even actually up firing, but it's the virtualization, but it is compatible with Atmos if you base things off of a Sonos Arc or Arc Ultra. And then when you do it as a 4.2 setup in this dual Sonos amp setting, that is like the front subwoofer is the bass producing thing for the front left and right speakers, and the rear subwoofer is the bass producing thing for the pair of surround speakers. Those two subwoofers are not actually receiving the same signal together. So you're not getting the benefits, the true benefits of dual subs unless that bass is present in both the front and the surround channels simultaneously there. So, there's a few drawbacks, limitations, I'll say, of this setup for sure. But yeah, just some corrections there to let us know that there are ways of connecting your own subwoofer to a Sonos system through the Sonos amp, and that you can actually set up a 4.1 or 4.2 setup that way. Yeah,
there you go. Dazz had 2 comments. First, he wanted to give a shout out to us in Acoustics. His whole speaker setup are the SE series. Mm-hmm. So they were made before Dave got his Klippel near-field scanner and started redesigning all speaker models. Dazz decided to hop on getting a pair of CBM 170 SE speakers while they are on 22% off sale.
That's right.
So now he has CMT 340 SEs, CBM 170 SEs, and HTM-200 SEs. Just please stop. You just make normal names.
Well, those are diameters, the numbers.
I understand. Where they come from, but still it sucks. The full complement of the original SE series is owned by Dazz.
That's right.
What he loves about Ascend is that when he called to confirm his order and address, when they called to confirm his order and address, he asked if he could add some of the $10 flush wall mounts for his HTM-200SE speakers. They currently only show up as an option if you add them to the new HTM-200SE2 speakers when you're ordering online. But Dina at Ascend said there was no problem to add them to a CBM 170 SE order. Their customer service is always top-notch. Mm-hmm. He plans to use the CBM 170 SEs as surrounds while moving a pair of HTM-200 SEs to the surround back duty. But what Dazz really wants is a new receiver that can do front wides, because that's why. The CBM 170 SEs will be perfect for that when the time comes.
Yes.
So he's got speakers in a box.
Yep.
Just waiting to get used.
That's right.
It's fine. Whatever. I'm sorry that I
You
don't
can't
think
complain
that.
about other people with things in boxes.
I'm not. I mean,
I know yours isn't by choice, but still.
My wife is like she actually was excited when I told her we got a receiver.
Right. Yeah.
And then she was decidedly less excited when the second one showed up. I'll be honest. She's like, "What do we need 2 for?" I'm like, "Because I might want top middles." I could do the receiver thing.
Well, and we know the X4000, as nice as it is, super happy to have that one. It's it doesn't do all the things that Tom's old setup did. So
yes.
one of these days he'll be back to the way things were.
It will, yes. Yeah. And for Dazz's second comment, he specifically wants to elicit a cold weather cycling tirade from Tom. You do not have to work too hard for that, because I froze my ass off on Saturday and I was miserable. So Dazz bought a 2024 Trek Top Fuel 8 XT cross-country mountain bike. Despite it being designed mostly for single-track off-road trails, he still rides it on the road sometimes. He's just returning to cycling after more than a decade away from it, so he hasn't amassed a lot of cycling apparel yet. When he goes on trails, he wears baggy shorts over his bib shorts. But if he races, he says he has no shame and goes full MAMIL.
Now, I don't know. I threw in a bunch of the terms that he used because I am not a cyclist. I don't know everything that he's talking about. I don't know what that initialism is. I don't know
what that means.
Okay, there you go.
I've never heard that. I'm literally Googling it right now because I
don't know what that means.
Middle-aged man in Lycra. That's what that means.
Gotcha.
And believe me, when I cycled this morning, we got to the top of this bridge, and you could see the Don Cesar, which is this big hotel on St. Pete Beach. It's a very old, very pink hotel. It's been around for ages. And we got to the top, and my cycling partner took a picture with me in it, and I got the picture. And I was like, "Oh God, burn that picture!" It's so bad. It looks so bad. I am in a lot of spandex. So on December 1st, it was around 40 degrees. No.
I mean, that's still well above freezing, so I don't see what the problem is.
You can shut your Canadian mouth.
That's right.
No one cares what you have to say. No one cares. 40 degrees is too damn cold. When he decided to go for a ride at 40 degrees, he put on his bib shorts and then compression shirt as an underlayer. He doesn't have proper cycling socks yet, so regular socks had to suffice. He has 4-way stretch tapered jogging pants with a windbreaker exterior. He wore a Henley that isn't a thermal shirt, but the fabric reminds him of a thermal shirt, so that counts, right? Reminds him. Facebook said that nitrile gloves under riding gloves work well. If you want to sit there and baste your hands and sweat.
Yeah.
So he tried putting on some of the nitrile gloves that he has for barbecuing. And lastly, a soft shell jacket from Costco was really good at blocking the wind, even if it isn't a warm jacket. He does have proper cycling shoes, so he laced those up and off he went. The first 10 minutes were miserable. Breathing in 40-degree air felt impossible, but he eventually warmed up and actually kind of forgot about the cold for a bit. But then he started sweating. His bib shorts and compression shirt did their job to wick away the sweat, but then where did all that sweat go? Why, into his Henley shirt, of course, and then the soft shell jacket and windbreaker pants did a remarkable job of holding all that sweat in. Not to mention those nitrile gloves under his cycling gloves.
Yeah.
He completed his winter road ride on a mountain bike without dying, so he felt accomplished getting back home. But even his wife couldn't believe the amount of sweat he brought home with him, and that was enough to convince him he has to invest in some proper winter riding gear. Will Tom be No, I will not be joining you. No. My cycling partner keeps yelling at me because I refuse to buy winter stuff because it's going to rot before I actually use it enough. It's just easier to stay inside for the probably 8 sessions a year.
It'd be so infrequently used in Tom's case. Yeah.
But so the whole idea of the cycling, spandex, people look at it like, oh, that's so stupid. People look at your home theater and they go, that's so stupid. That's what they do. They walk into your house and they look at all the speakers, and in the car as they're driving on, they're like, that's a stupid number of speakers. It's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody should do that. It's a big waste of money. He looks, that's a waste of a room. They could have done so much other stuff with that. Blah 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 blah. They say a bunch of crap because they don't understand. And cycling clothes are exactly the same way. When I first started cycling, it was the same thing. I wore first. I got like really cheap Amazon cycling shorts that I would wear underneath my shorts. At the time, I didn't know that those were supposed to be underwear. Basically, the cycling shorts are underwear. So I'd wear underwear underneath it, which is a chafing nightmare. I figured that out real quick. But the whole idea of these of cycling is, when you're out there and just riding around with your family, no, you don't need to wear cycling clothes. Why would you? It's just like watching TV in the background. You don't need all those speakers. You don't need a subwoofer to watch TV in the background and have like the news on or some cooking show while you're prepping dinner and people are talking or something like that. But when you want to watch a movie and have the movie experience, you need all the speakers. You need the big TV. You need all that stuff. When you're cycling and you're cycling for exercise or, part of the fun of cycling is cycling at a speed that makes you sweat. Suddenly you run into all sorts of issues like what Dazz was describing here, where either you baste yourself in sweat or your clothes are so baggy that they catch the wind and it's like tying a rock to the back of the bike and throwing it off and just dragging this brick behind you. It's insane. And then the clothes themselves, other than the bib shorts, which we'll get, that we don't have to get into all that, but they're designed to pull all this moisture away from you so that you're not basted in this, because you're going to be sweating like crazy anyways. There's just no doubt about that. But it gets it all off of your body and allows it to go someplace else, sometimes on the cyclist behind you, sometimes hopefully into the air. It depends on how much you sweat. So, it's got this really functional thing. And then I, of course, buy the loudest, most obnoxious clothes you've ever seen.
Gotcha.
Like if it's not bright I want you to have every chance of seeing. I know a lot of cyclists, black bike, black helmet, all black clothes. I'm like, what are you, a ninja? Stop it. You're going to get run over by a car, you idiot. Wear something neon. Wear something with a big skull on the back of it or something like that. Anything to get people to notice you, because we have a very good cycling infrastructure around here. We complain about it constantly because complaining is what people do, but at least we have bike lanes. They're too small and they're full of crap, but at least they're there. That's better than a lot of places. So yes, the whole cycling in the cold thing is you run into this dichotomy of you want to be warm enough,
sure,
right, that you're not going to die or feel like you're dying, but you also need the moisture to go someplace. That's so that right. you don't, because what happened to me is I was miserable the entire ride. I had every bit of clothing I owned on, and when we got to like the coffee stop, everybody's sitting around talking, and then I'm like, listen, I feel like I have icicles like forming on my body right now. We need to start moving again. I cannot be here like this. Why you gotta be such a... Okay,
the problem with windbreaker stuff is that it holds the moisture in and you feel every bit as wet as if the rain were just falling on your skin. So that's why, we know around these parts, layers. If you want warmth, it's layers, but every layer thin and every layer breathable. That's the trick.
Well, and the problem with cycling, of course, at least on the kind of cycling I do, is you can wear layers to a certain extent, but then you have to, when you take it off, you have to be able to put it someplace. And a lot of times on a bike, unlike my bike, there is no place to put it. I have pockets in my back of my jersey, and if it doesn't go in that pocket, I might as well throw it away because there's no place to put it. All right, let's get to the questions here.
Finally, yes. Now that we're a cycling podcast,
we are a cycling. If you have a cycling podcast, I would love to be on it. Ryan. First up, Ryan is using a LG B4 OLED TV. He needed more HDMI input, so he got a simple 4-in, 1-out HDMI switch that says HDMI 2.1 and supports 48 gigabits per second. It's from a brand called Roofle.
Yeah.
At least it has vowels in it. I'll give it that.
It's all capitalized, but that is I don't know if it's an acronym, but at least it's pronounceable. Yeah.
It is pronounceable, and it has vowels. A lot of these things just seem like they mashed on all the consonants, and then that was it. Anyways, he says it seems to function perfectly fine, but is there any chance it might degrade the audio or video quality at all? Would connecting certain source devices directly to his TV give him higher quality versus having the Roofle HDMI switch in the signal chain? So, okay, in general, first of all, it's very hard to find a device that will degrade HDMI like video or audio quality as if it were some sort of attenuation or like... This
is not analog where there's no analog, degrees here.
Right. In analog, you're like, it could like somehow EQ it or make it, whatever. HDMI usually works or it doesn't work. What could happen is that your source could detect that the Roofle cannot accept the full bandwidth, whatever it can send out, and then send out something of a lower quality that it could pass through. That would be where your audio or video degradation, if you will, would come from. It would come from the switch or the device or whatever saying, I can't handle 120 4K, Dolby Atmos. Send me something with less bandwidth. And then it's like, okay, how about 4K 120 with Dolby Digital? And it's like, nope. Okay, how about 4K 60 with Dolby Digital? Nope. You know what I mean? So,
but that's all established in the HDMI handshake, and this Roofle device is reporting back to anything that's plugged into it that it's full HDMI 2.1, full 48 gigabits per second, and can handle all of the current signaling that might be sent via that specification. So, the short answer is no. There's no chance that it's going to degrade the audio or video quality in some sort of analog-like fashion. The only thing it could potentially do is create signal errors, outright signal errors that would show up as sparkling or macro blocking, or full-on signal dropouts. Nothing that would be considered subtle. Nothing that's like when people say degrading the audio video quality, I'm going back to analog type days where you might get a little bit of fuzziness, get a little bit of static, get some high frequency roll off, those types of things. Subtle things that if you weren't paying attention, you might not even fully notice. If it's an HDMI error, it's blatantly noticeable. There is something completely wrong or a full signal dropout. So I mean, that's a type of degradation to be sure, but it's not one where you'd have to ask. Right? You'd be like, there is a clear and obvious problem. Is it my HDMI switch? It's not going to be might I not notice it if I'm not paying attention? No, it'd be really obvious if there's a problem.
I've linked up a Navy Gadgets article that has a picture of what dropouts would look like. And I think Rob was the one that provided that picture. But on top of that, so the way that you would know that the HDMI was not working properly is it would literally tell you that what signal you are getting, and then you would go, that's not what I want. I want something higher bandwidth than that. Or it would look like this. These HDMI dropouts, which are, like Rob said, sparkles, like weird black boxes in places and stuff like that. So, all right. Back in 2014, he bought some Sonos Play 1 speakers. They were $400 at the time, and he has come to regret that purchase. They only work with Sonos. They won't connect anything else.
Nope.
All he really wants to do is have the Sonos Play 1 speaker play whatever the TV is playing. He can easily send the TV's audio to his $30 Bluetooth speaker, but these $400 Sonos speakers do nothing but collect dust. So, is there any way to hack the things together to make them work the way he wants? He's mainly concerned about his TV's own built-in apps, sounds and apps, his Amazon Fire TV device, and he does have a Nintendo Wii he'd like to keep working as well. Well, I think you should sell them. That's what I would do.
That's one way.
That's if it were me, I would be like, okay.
Yeah, because the Sonos Play 1, they never had Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a relatively new thing for Sonos to be supporting in any way. Their newest devices, since they started on their portable devices, they started adding Bluetooth, and now I'm pretty sure the Sonos Arc Ultra, their brand newest, highest end soundbar, does finally let you send Bluetooth to it as well. But yeah, back in the day, Sonos did not support Bluetooth whatsoever, and the Sonos Play 1s, they don't have any sort of analog input or a digital coax or an optical input or anything like that. They were meant to be part of the Sonos system and nothing but. So the only potential way that you could hack this together would mean paying more than you paid for the Sonos Play 1 speakers to add a device called the Sonos Port to your system. It's a $450 little box because it's Sonos. And what this is mainly designed for, the main idea was I have an AV receiver or I have my own self-powered speakers, but I want to connect them to the Sonos system through my wireless connection in my house. So the port gives you a pair of RCA output jacks that can send something from Sonos to another device. But the port also has a pair of RCA jack ins. And that's how you could get the sound as long as your TV has an analog audio output, because that's the only type of input that the port has is analog. It has a digital output, but not a digital input. So if your TV has a stereo analog output jack, you could plug that into the port. That will now send that audio into your Sonos system, and you could direct that sound to your Sonos Play 1 speakers. That would be the roundabout way of getting the sound out of your TV and into the Sonos system when you have those older style speakers. The reason they have those RCA ins is mostly that it was people who have turntables and wanted a way to connect their turntable to their Sonos system, to be able to play their turntable sound through any speakers in their Sonos house, in their whole house audio setup, but it would work for a TV with analog outputs too. But yeah, $450 means it costs even more than your Sonos Play 1 speakers. It might be time to just buy new speakers.
Sell it. Sell them now.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that people who do have a Nintendo Wii, because like Gene over at Audioholics always makes comments about how he still needs his analog video input because he still uses his Nintendo Wii. They have Wii HDMI adapters. They cost $10. So you just plug that into the AV out jack of the Nintendo Wii, and it gives you an HDMI output port for your Wii for $10. So that is something you can, if you're still using a Wii, you can absolutely connect it via HDMI for a very inexpensive dongle.
So lastly, he's seen some people on his Facebook Sonos group saying that the Sonos Sub is better than the SVS SB2000. he laughed when he saw that, but could we compare the performance of the two subwoofers? So Rob's got here
CEA
some
2010 measurements, which is a standardized measurements. Sound and Vision, thankfully, did CEA 2010 measurements on the Sonos Sub. Yeah. And so you'll notice that 20 hertz and 25 hertz, just not applicable. It doesn't put any sound out at 25 hertz and 20 hertz.
Why would you need those frequencies?
Now, here's the thing, and here's the part where the claims are coming from, because some people have clearly seen these numbers. And so 31.5 hertz is outputting 99 decibels, according to Sound and Vision CA 2010 measurements. Yeah. And then 40 hertz, 50 hertz, 63 hertz, you've got 110, 114, 115 type of decibel output. So if we go over and look at the SB2000, and this is the original SB2000, not the SB2000 Pro, which can actually go louder than this, but the original SB2000, Audioholics was borrowing actually Brent Butterworth's CA 2010 measurements, and there it is producing sound at 25 and 20 hertz, 92 dB at 20 hertz from 2 meters away, 97 dB at 25 hertz from 2 meters away. But people are looking at those 40, 50, 63 hertz ones and going, well, hey, this SB2000 CA 2010 measurements from 2 meters away, producing 108, 109, 109, those type of output figures. And if we go back to that Sonos Sub, 110, 114, 115, those numbers at 40, 50, 63 hertz, they're higher. Yes, those are not 2 meter measurements. Sound and Vision clarified that they did measure, like the microphone was physically 2 meters away, but then they added 6 decibels to it, which is not the correct amount. I'm not sure why they added 6 decibels. You're supposed to add 9 to the 2 meter measurements if you're doing the 1 meter measurement reference. But take those numbers and subtract 6 from them. If you subtract 6 from them, because they clearly stated they added 6 to them from their 2 meter ground plane measurements. So subtract 6. So now we're at like 104, 108, 109. And now, honestly, 40, 50, 63 hertz, it's not far away from what that SB2000, the original SB2000, was doing. That's pretty impressive for that little Sonos Sub. But there is objectively no question that the SB2000 is a more capable subwoofer because it does produce sound at 25 and 20 hertz, and the Sonos Sub does not. That is a pretty clear objective difference between those two subs, and that, like I say, is the original SB2000. The SB2000 Pro is even more capable than that.
Yeah. I know this comes as a huge shock to some people. This is the thing. Can I just, as a little aside, the thing you bought doesn't have to be better than the thing somebody else bought in order for you to feel good about your purchase. Sure. You can just like it. You can just say, it sounds good to me. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be like, that other sub is crap compared to my Sonos Sub. Who cares? First of all, who cares? Who cares how much, one receiver weighs versus the other? Because if I went by weight alone on these receivers, I'm like, this NAD receiver is a frickin' beast, And
the NAD receiver you got is objectively capable of more features than the X4000. There's
no doubt about that.
No wiggle
but I bet
room,
if you put it in a head-to-head weight comparison to a Den or Marantz receiver of similar feature set, the NAD would still outweigh it by 50%, I would guess, if not more. So does that make it better? Who cares? Who cares if it's better? Are you happy with it? People are driving around with big smiles on their face driving their Kia. Okay? Sure. I wouldn't be.
I'm very much considering getting a Kia EV9. If I'm going to get an electric vehicle, it's probably going to be an EV9. So
there you go. Yeah. See? My wife drove a Sonata for a long time. It used to be a Sonata, but then the A fell off at the end. So it was just a Sonata for a long time. She loved it. Hyundai. Almost a Honda, but not. Sasi was excited to see the new Ascend HTM-200SE2 speakers that we've talked about in the news. Can we stop talking about them so I can stop having to say all those letters? He knows we've recommended the old 200SE speakers many times in the past, and he understands the appeal. It's a very minor quibble, but why does Ascend include an in-room sensitivity number as part of the specs that seems to be a bit inflated? They're claiming 90 dB in-room sensitivity, even though our own Anaco sensitivity spec says 86, and as we said at the beginning, Rob says 85. But then, like we mentioned, they show their own Klippel measurements that indicate the Anaco sensitivity is actually 85. Again, I just said that. Or slightly lower if we're mostly paying attention to the lower frequency region. So how do they end up with that 90 dB as a number? And what would be so bad if they rated it 87 or 88, which would seem to be better, would seem to better match their own posted measurements, and doesn't seem like a number that would raise any eyebrows. I don't know. People are stupid, and I don't mean Ascend in this case, but I mean people as a whole are they're dumb. We've talked on this podcast. I've said this story many times, where it was like a friend of a friend, and she was shopping for a TV, and the TV was essentially black frame insertion. I think it was what it was, and they called it something. So she basically went to every TV manufacturer and said, "Do you have
name that they have?
Do you have this trademark name?" And they said, "No." Okay, well then I don't want your TV because that trademark name thing is the best. They're like, "No, but we do the same thing. We just call it if it's that sort of thing." So why? Because the bigger number is better. That's why. And how? I mean, why does Paradigm have that crazy
DIN rating, which is a real rating, right? It's a European rating. It's a part of a standard, yeah.
But it's just a bigger number, and then that's the whole thing. And people get so. I mean, we get frustrated on this podcast when they're like, "It's a 7,000 watt receiver." No, it's not. No, it's not. It never was. What are you talking about? But they come up with these crazy numbers. So it's just, that's why. I mean, in my mind, that's why.
Now, Dave has sort of explained on their own Ascend forums that the reason he puts it in there is because, so the anechoic measurement is the anechoic measurement. And that's pretty straightforward. He might be being a little bit liberal and paying more attention to the mid-range where it's outputting the most. So, okay, that 86 came from there. If we're actually looking at like what the average is across the entire plus minus 3 dB frequency range, it really should be 85. But that's splitting hairs. That's 1 dB difference. That's easy to explain. But he's like, he wanted to have a figure that is for all the people who come and ask him the question, okay, so the rated sensitivity is 85 or 86. I want to be able to hit full cinema reference volume. Right. So does that mean I need a 4,000 watt amplifier? Right. To power these speakers, and it's not rated at being able to absorb 4,000 watts. So what are we going to do? Are these speakers completely useless? Like, I want to give a figure that is like in the typical installation. If you're doing the calculation, this is going to give you the appropriate answer for how much amplifier power you need for these speakers. And one of the reasons why the HTM-200SE2 now ends up being plus 4 dB versus the anechoic measurement is because these are going to be wall mounted. These are wall-mounted speakers. You're getting a boundary effect of these ones. Whereas the stand-mounted speakers, we're expecting those are going to be some distance from the wall. So we'll give them a plus 3 dB for the in-room sensitivity spec versus the HTM-200SEs that we're expecting to either be on a wall or like actually in a bookshelf. And you're getting the boundary effects from those, or mounted in a corner, or that type of thing. So, it's reasonable. It is a fudged figure. It's not like... you can have an installation of your HTM-200SE2 speakers that isn't 4 decibels louder than the anechoic measurement. There's all kinds of ways that could end up happening. But it's like, these are probably going to be wall-mounted, so you're going to get that bit of boundary effect. And I think he's, like, I can't say it's right to do it, but I'm going to say he's not wrong to do it because, yes, for all the people who are worried that they need a 4,000 watt receiver to power these things, it's like, no, you really don't. They're going to be just fine in almost any typical room.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, people are dumb, and it's not so much that they are. I'm making a value judgment against them as individuals. It's just that as a whole, you can only care about so many things. You can only be knowledgeable about so many things. That at some point, you need some shorthand. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at two different speakers, or if you're looking at, like Rob says, if he's just trying to fend off some of the inane questions he gets from people who are like, well, I'm saying it's 86 in my room. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to have enough, whatever. Okay. We can tell you in most rooms, most speakers will hit reference volume if you sit within a reasonable distance of them. And that's the answer. That's the answer. And 86 or 85 even is a reasonable sensitivity for most speakers.
Very much so.
And if you're sitting 10 feet away, and 10 feet is far away. If you're sitting 10 feet away, they're going to be fine.
And you have your pretty typical at this point AV receiver that's rated at 100 watts per channel, and people aren't digging into whether that's, actually they're just looking at the figure, right? It says 100 watts per channel. My speakers say they're 90 dB sensitive. I'm sitting 10 feet away. Am I going to be able to hit 105 dB? And the answer is yes, according to that math. So that's where the fudging of the numbers comes in.
Yeah. And I mean, the people end up on Reddit and they Sonos or Facebook, and Sonos subs are better than SVS subs. And now that SVS has got to spend a bunch of questions about that, you're just like, okay, just stop it, guys. Just stop it. It's fine. Brad has an Onkyo TX RZ50 receiver. In its settings menu, there's an option to turn on THX Ultra Select Subwoofer. By default, it is set to no, and the manual says to only set it to yes if you're using a THX certified sub. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a crazy setting. He's using an SVS PB2000 Pro sub, and he upgraded his DRAC license to DRAC Live Bass Control. So he's wondering, what does that THX subwoofer setting actually do, and should he turn it on or leave it off? You should definitely leave it off. I have no idea what it does.
Yeah, it's actually it's more like a preset than anything else. All it really does is give you the global 80 hertz crossover, which is the default setting anyway for anything that you set to small, but it gives you the global 80 hertz crossover. It gives you the 120 hertz low pass filter on the subwoofer, which it should be anyway and should never change and is the default anyway, but there's no changing it when you turn the THX subwoofer setting on inside the Onkyo. And then it gives you the pretty standard fourth order slope at the top of your subwoofer for that low pass filter. So it's all the typical things that almost any normal AV receiver does anyway, but because it's THX certified, that AV receiver, THX wants that setting to be there. So it's like a single subwoofer setting, set it and forget it, so that your crossovers and your slopes are the way that THX has divided what the speaker to subwoofer crossover ought to be. And it's kind of the one button setting to let you do that. So all the people who want their speakers to play lower and have the crossover be lower than 80 hertz, they're definitely going to want to keep that setting off. But yeah, there's no particular reason that you need to turn that on. There's no advantage to it in your case.
Right. So he is planning on getting a second PB2000 Pro sub, but he has very limited options as to where the two subwoofers can be physically placed in his room. He currently has a single PB2000 Pro in the front left corner, and he tends to keep it there. The second PB2000 Pro can go on the right side wall, basically at the midpoint of the wall itself, which is a little behind the seating position. The front left corner sub is about 13 feet away from his main seat, and the second sub would end up being about 6 feet away from the right, to the right and slightly behind. Mm-hmm. Even though he has paid to upgrade his RZ50 receiver to DRAC Live Bass Control, it still only has mono subwoofer outputs. There are two RCA jacks, but it's just an internal Y splitter. Both subwoofers outputs share the exact same distance, level, and EQ settings. So do we think he should get a mini DSP 2x4 HD and use Room EQ Wizard to adjust the settings on it for his two subwoofers and then turn and run DRAC after that? Or should he actually be looking to upgrade his AV receiver to a model that offers independent subwoofer outputs? This distance makes no difference. Really.
Well, not no difference.
It's functionally no difference as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they're definitely, first of all, what you said was he has he has limited number of places he can put the second sub.
That's right.
And
now,
what I heard
they are
was
somewhat across the room from each other. They're not like stacked, or they're not both on the same wall. So at least they're somewhat.
But he only gave us one option. Like, is there not another one?
I mean, that's probably the best. His probably only other option is also on the front wall. So I like his idea better than that.
I do as well. So I would have liked to have heard the rest of the options, that no matter what they were, just to kind of do that. We advocate almost always to place subwoofers. I mean, set subwoofers so they're getting that mono output anyways.
Yeah, anyway.
So you are, as far as I'm concerned, skipping a step.
That's
okay. Right. This is a feature, not a problem.
Yep.
So not a bug, it's a feature. So the one thing you can do, and Rob's going to walk you through it, is play with the phase on that on one of the subs, and then to try to make sure that they sound the same.
Well,
or more
that
the
they
same.
sound uniform. That's really all we're really worried about before you go and run DRAC. Since even though I'm not really sure why you paid for bass control in this one, I got to be completely honest, because you don't have multiple independent subwoofers that Dirac is able to directly control. So it's going to do the crossover thing that it does, in that it's looking at both the bass response of your front, left, and right speakers plus the single subwoofer signal, and trying to best integrate those and kind of use those together as a little bit of a multiple bass producing thing in the crossover region. So you're getting a minor benefit from the bass control there, but this is one I might have warned you away value-wise from paying extra to get bass control in the case of the RZ50. But that all put aside, when you're doing this, your goal is to achieve uniform bass across, like a 3-seater couch area is sort of a realistic target. Achieve uniform bass prior to running Dirac, so that when you do run Dirac and you're taking all of those various microphone measurements at the different locations, you're going to get very uniform response. That's what the microphone is going to pick up. And once it picks up uniform response, it then says, oh, well, I can be fairly aggressive in the EQ that I apply to get you to whatever target you're going after in your bass response, because if I make a certain frequency louder and another frequency quieter, that's going to apply across all of your seats. It's not going to be a case where it corrects it for one of the seats, but then makes it 10 times worse for the seat next to you, and therefore it can't really do that. It's going to try to average it out and ends up not really doing much in the EQ, because if one seat gets better, another seat gets worse. We don't want that. We want all the seats to get better together. So we're targeting uniformity. That's what we're really worried about. And if your two subwoofers are a pair of PB2000 Pros, they have a lot of adjustment capability built right into the subwoofers. I'm going to say that you don't need to buy anything. I don't think you need to buy a mini DSP 2x4 HD in this case, because in order to achieve that uniformity, you are, like I say, at least getting the subwoofers somewhat across the room from each other. So maybe it's not optimal across the room positioning. Maybe there's still a little bit of non-uniformity that would be improved if they were both at the midpoints of the two side walls, or at the midpoints of the front wall and the midpoint of the back wall. That will, just by physical virtue, probably get you the most uniform response without you having to touch too much else. But in your case, you might have to play a little bit with the settings, but that's where my 12-step guide to dual subwoofers comes into play. Using the capabilities that are built right into those PB2000 Pro subs, I'm very confident you'd be able to achieve nice uniform response across a 3-seater couch, just adjusting the phase of one of the subwoofers. And maybe even, those subs, the PB2000 Pros, they have their own 3-band parametric EQ in there. So if there's one particular frequency that needs a little bit of adjustment, you can do that right inside the subwoofer itself without paying any extra. So I'm saying at least give all of that a try first, because it doesn't cost you any money, and I really don't think you need to buy anything here.
I don't think so either. I don't see any reason to go that route. It's, I guess we would call it in cycling marginal gains, and it's not going to be something that you're going to really, might think that it's going to make a big difference, and it's just sonically not going to make a huge difference, especially when you do most of it by ear. So he's running I do have one more thing about this, but I'll read this question first. He's running a 5.1.4 configuration. By default, Dirac aims to achieve equal output via the trim levels for all the speakers at microphone position 1. And he's typically seen the instructions that if you're doing your trim levels manually with an SPL meter to aim for a reading of 75 dB, C weighted for all of your speakers at the main seating location. But some people swear by boosting some of the speakers, He's specifically curious about surround and overhead speakers. Do we personally boost any of those by like a dB or 2? He'd love to hear our input about this topic. Try it, I guess.
Sure. You're absolutely allowed to if you want to.
Yeah. The things that you could do without having to touch anything is use different upmixing. So the DTS upmixing tends to have the overheads a little hotter.
Not just a little, a lot.
I'm being gracious here.
Yeah.
Than the Dolby upmixing. Yeah. So if you're watching something and it's 5.1 or 2.0, and you turn on Dolby upmixing versus DTS or vice versa, and you switch back and forth a couple of times, and you're like, I kind of like this one better than the other one. That tells you whether or not you want your overheads to be normal or hot, basically right there without having to touch anything. And remember, in the settings, personally, I find that, content itself is mixed sometimes so differently that uniformly doing anything other than making everything sound equal, or the same volume at your listening position, inevitably leads to you having something sound very bad. in my experience. So, suddenly something that's supposed to be a little subtle in the room, behind you or off to the side or something like that, because you've decided that you want to mix everything a little bit hot because you like it to be hot in most things, but this other thing is already a little bit hot, but it's also supposed to be not quite as hot as you've made it. Suddenly you're like, what the hell is that? And it just it takes you kind of out of the experience. So for me, I don't tend to do this. I don't know, maybe Rob's different. What do you think, Rob?
Neither do I don't do any boosting of my own. So I mean, this is just a matter of preference. A lot of people, very, very commonly, they're like, if they're adding surround speakers, they're adding overhead speakers, they want to notice them.
They want to hear them.
They want to notice them. They want to notice when something is there. And like Tom says, if the mixer really wanted to draw your attention to one of those sounds, they'll make it very noticeable. But generally, they want your attention at the front of the room. So the other sounds that are around you, behind you, above you, they're supposed to be quite subtle. They're supposed to be ambient, atmospheric, where Atmos came from. And so predominantly your attention is still supposed to be drawn to the front of the screen the majority of the time. If there's a particular sound they really want you to notice, they'll make that very clear in the mix. But the rest of the time, it's supposed to be like, you're not really noticing that you have surround and overhead speakers. It's just if you suddenly turn them all off, you go like, oh, okay, where did some of the room tone and where did some of the sense of space and where did some of those subtle surround effects, where did they go? But it's not supposed to be that they're like the thing you really notice. But a lot of people, they're like, I paid all this money for all these speakers and all these amplifiers and all these channels. I want to notice them when they play them. So I boost them up 3 dB and now I notice them when they make a sound. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's your money. It's your system. If you want to notice them, go ahead and boost them up. Nothing can stop you. And you can always put it back to where it was before.
I will say lastly that, he was talking about PB2000 Pros.
Yep.
And that's a very large box.
It's a physically big box.
I'm wondering if his options for placement would be better if he was looking at cylinders, the PC2000 Pro rather than the PB. And even maybe getting the sealed box of the 3000 or whatever whatever.
That much smaller of a footprint once you start going to those ones, but
something like that. So I always want to know if there's other options other than just when they give you such limited information, it kind of makes me think they already know what answer they want and they're trying to steer you towards it, and I don't like that so much. Just give me all the data and I'll tell you what my opinion is. Jack. In Jack's bedroom setup at home, he wanted something that sounds better than his TV's built-in speakers. Well, that's setting the bar low. So he took a pair of JBL 305 self-powered studio monitors, and he connected those to his TV's 3.5 headphone jack using a 3.5 to RCA adapter cable. Since it's a headphone jack, the TV automatically mutes its own speakers whenever something is plugged into the headphone port. And the TV's own volume controls on its remote still change the volume, so he can set the volume dial on the JBL monitors once and leave them alone. It's simple and it works. So his parents just got a new Hisense TV. They also want something better than the TV's built-in speakers, but they are the opposite of tech savvy, and they live over 3 hours away. So Jack doesn't want any tech support calls. Good freaking luck.
I know, right? Yes. We're all familiar. We share your pain.
And therefore, anything to do with Bluetooth or HDMI ARC is out of the question. He checked, and their Hisense TV just have a 3.5 millimeter output jack, and the manual says it is variable. So would an identical setup to what he's using in his bedroom work for his parents? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, it should work. Yeah, it should be okay. If it's a variable analog stereo audio output, then that means that the volume controls will change the line level signal that's coming out of there. In this case, it doesn't label it as a headphone jack. It labels it as an aux output, auxiliary output, but it does specifically say variable. So you might need to, when you're setting this up for your parents the first time, go into the speaker settings of the TV and actually turn those off so that the TV's built-in speakers are not making any sound. And then very often on that aux output jack, there's actually an option to change it between fixed and variable. So just make sure it's remaining on variable. But from there, it should function exactly like your TV in your bedroom.
Lastly, the JBL 305 monitors are about the right size and price, $250 to $300 for his parents, but he's not sure they'll love the looks. They will definitely not be using a subwoofer, so there are any other self-powered speakers that are about the same size and price that might look a little nicer on either side of his parents' new TV.
Yeah.
I don't know what size those things are.
They're a 5-inch woofer. 5-inch woofer in the 305s. So that's the sort of size. And yeah, right away, Fluences. AI 41s, they jump to mind. They're slightly less expensive, so no complaints there. There's 4 different finish options on them. So they aren't just the JBL 305s, they are studio monitors, so they're just black, industrial-looking speakers. And the Fluence AI 41s, they're a little bit nicer. They got this kind of fake wood tone on the side, either a white or a front.
I have a review of those on AV
black,
Gadgets, so I'll link that up for you.
But, they got RCA jack on the back, so that'll work exactly the same, as long as your parents don't touch either, because there are selections for the various inputs, right? Because you can send Bluetooth to the Fluence AI 41s, you can send RCA, or you can send a digital signal. So as long as they don't touch the input change thing on there, and as long as they don't touch the volume dial after they've been set, then it should work exactly like your setup at home.
Yeah, and they have multiple options as far as colors there.
That's
too.
right.
I think the ones I reviewed were just black, just flat black.
They do have a black, of course, but they have a black front with a wood grain finish, and then they have a white front with a light wood, or a white front with a dark wood. So
so they can pick something that
blends with their decor.
Yeah. And literally any sound bar will work too, but it doesn't sound like he wants to go in that direction.
I like those speakers better than any sound bar. So
yeah, that's why I called him a sound bar killer.
That's right.
So there you go. Chris is trying to advise his cousin who just moved from Texas to Las Vegas with his wife. Your cousin moved with your wife?
That's right. That's the language I used right there. That's right. Ambiguous.
Chris is like, I would like to send them a special package about what display they should buy for their new home theater room. It's going to be very small and very far away because I want them not to be able to read the subtitles. At his previous house, they had a Sony 4K projector, and they absolutely loved it. Chris's cousin's wife, that's a lot of apostrophes.
Well, that's what it is.
Doesn't want to go back to a flat panel.
Yeah.
Well, she's not the boss of us. So naturally, Chris asked them about the lighting control situation in the new house, and they said that there is 0 light control, but they're open to ideas. So curtains? This is not going to be anything close to a bat cave, though. There's going to be some ambient light. There's also a huge ceiling fan. Is this a torture chamber? It sounds like it's just like this is a massive fan spinning over the top and the light. Okay. They've talked to a home theater designer from the Magnolia section at their new local Best Buy. I feel like we should have put home theater designer in quotes there. They suggested going with an ultra short throw setup, 120 inches, using either a Samsung, the Premier 9T, or an Epson LS800 UST model. The price points of around $6,000 to $8,000 are no problem. Chris figures they'll be willing to pay even more if it's really, really worth it. But he knows they are big-time horror movie fans. What is going on with this question? Horror movie fans.
I'm trying. I'm just including all the information.
So he has his doubts about whether all this is honestly the best approach. What do we say? They definitely want a true theater-like feel, but they aren't going to have theater-like lighting control in the room. They seem to want to use Magnolia to do the installation, which is just a terrible idea.
It's not that bad. Magnolia's okay. I wouldn't do like the Geek Squad installation, but Magnolia specifically, when they have those dedicated sections, they're okay.
I want references. Basically, and I know they'll be able to find somebody who says good things about them, but surely you'll be able to do some. I will also say,
in Las Vegas, there are lots of dedicated home theater installers who can do a better job. I agree there. So that's,
And you don't really need, again, as somebody who's having to rebuild an entire house, you don't need a home theater company to install your home theater gear. What you need is to know where it goes, be able to mark things on walls, and then hire the right people.
If you're installing a 100-inch TV, or if you're installing an ultra short throw, I can see wanting a professional to set that up for you. But there are lots of places other than Best Buy and Magnolia in Las Vegas that can do a terrific job of that. So they do not have to be limited.
Maybe go ahead and just do a little shopping around.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's something available to purchase and install from. So if there's something available to purchase and install from them, that would be preferred. Okay, so
from Magnolia,
whatever. Okay, so they want to buy from Magnolia is what that sentence is supposed to say, but I don't know what it says. Do we think one or the other of the Samsung or Epson ultra short throw projector options is a good choice? If not, what should they get instead?
Right.
So if they refuse or cannot for some reason get curtains, because that's clearly the answer to this question.
Right.
Okay, there's two things. First of all, I feel like they've bought into, just based on what you've said here, into this sort of the cachet of a projector is somehow cinematic and a TV is not.
Absolutely. Sure.
Which I 1,000,000% do not agree with. And anybody who's actually seen a massive TV in a room has never gone, well, that just looks like a TV. They go, holy crap, that's a big picture.
I mean, our listener Karl does, but that's his specific thing. No. And I mean, I'm thinking this is mostly to do with size, and I don't blame most people out there having no knowledge that there is now a 115-inch QLED TV that is available for consumers to purchase, because why would most people know that? I also am not going to blame most people for not being aware that there are 98 and 100-inch TVs at stupidly affordable prices.
I know. It's dumb. Yeah. So my first thing is to sit them down and to say, let's really look at TVs before you go down this road. That is my
true, genuine answer. Like,
that's the real answer.
I know they can afford a 98-inch TV. Like, if they're considering either of these ultra short throw options, a 98-inch TV is definitely within their budget. Now, they were looking at the 120-inch, and they might want even larger than that. Like, the ultra short throws kind of top out at 120. They might have wanted even larger than that. In which case, 98-inch might be too small for what they want. And the 115-inch does exist, but it is $20,000, right? And that might be too much. More than doubling the type of budget they were looking at, which is not fair to say, just go ahead and more than double your budget to get that.
Is it though? Because when you come in with the projection screen and the installation,
but if someone told me to spend $20,000 on my display, I would go, no, that's not going to happen. So if somebody's also responded, no, that's not going to happen, I'm hardly going to blame them.
Sure.
But that is my real answer. If they can do a flat panel, they should do a flat panel. And if they were simply not aware of how affordable 98-inch and 100-inch flat panels are these days, I'm not going to blame them, because if you're not constantly TV shopping like we are, then who's going to be like, 100-inch TVs are totally available and affordable now? Like that blows a lot of people's minds when they find out what you can get for a 98-inch TV these days. So that's my real answer. But if that's totally out of the question, this is one where I'm going to say, I don't see any way that I'm going to recommend something other than ultra short throw in here. This is not a traditional long throw projection setup type of environment.
I wish I knew how far away they're going to be sitting from this TV.
Yeah,
that would really help us figure out whether or not they should go ultra short throw or a regular projector or a flat screen. I mean, it could completely rule out flat screen, to be honest with you.
It could. But if you're going to... if you're going to do this, I'm going to point you at LG's. LG's ultra short throws, their highest end ones, because they're within the same sort of price range as that Samsung The Premier. So we're talking about the LG HU915Q series. And they actually have two different models. The final letter, there's a 915QB and there's a 915QE. And visually, they're easy to tell apart because the QB has a black chassis and the QE has a white chassis. But there actually is a performance difference. It's the same triple laser light engine in both of them, but on the QB with the black chassis, they chose to go for higher contrast and wider color at the sacrifice of some maximum lumens. Still rated at 3,000 lumens, and it's actually kind of close to that. But it gives you the widest color. It's about 94% of DCI-P3 and slightly higher contrast. They did
Surely
those things.
You can get that from Magnolia too. I can imagine that you can. Get that from
I mean, it doesn't show up on the Best Buy website, but they have sold the LG products in the past for sure. And even if they don't, you can buy it, and Magnolia can install it for you. You don't have to purchase from Magnolia for them to do a USD installation. The QE version, just to fill out the details on that, with the white chassis, that is the flip side. They went for the maximum lumen output, but sacrificed some of the wide color and contrast to do it. So the QE version is like 3,500 lumens, but then it's like 89% of P3. So they're right in the $6,000 price range with those. ultra short throw screens, like I'm partial to the IlluneVision ones. They have their Aurora, which is the sawtooth design, and then they have their Reference, which is the sort of rejects light from all directions, but not quite as much specifically from overhead as the Aurora does. IlluneVision has really good nanotechnology coatings that they put on there. They really, really absorb the light from the parts that are coated to be light absorbing. But honestly, if you are buying from Magnolia, the Epson screens are actually really, really good. So in this case, like if you had to go Magnolia, I would maybe lean towards the Epson one, but I don't think the LS800 is as good as the LG ultra short throw projectors. Plus, the LGs are one of the few that has actual frame by frame dynamic tone mapping for HDR, and that is everything. That is everything. If you're doing anything HDR, you want that frame by frame dynamic tone mapping on a projector for sure. So I heavily lead towards the LGs in this case, the 915Q series, and then the screens you could an Epson screen I'd be very happy with, or an IlluneVision screen I'd be happy with.
So the other thing about going with another type of, or another avenue of installation, is that you could talk to some of these other home theater. I mean, not you can't do it with Magnolia, but they're going to be a lot more savvy about custom lighting control and that sort of thing. Because that, no matter what solution you go with, lighting control is going to make everything better, except for these light rejecting screens, which will make it actually worse. But if you can get light control, then you don't need the super expensive, light rejecting screens as much, and which will lower the cost and maybe enough to pay for the lighting control and have some extra money in your pocket. Who knows? I don't know how much light control you need, but I mean, you could really get something that works pretty well as far as you turn on the TV and all of a sudden all the shades pull or whatever and this sort of thing. So I mean, this is Las Vegas that you're moving to. Yep. I cannot believe that blinds are.
There are lots and lots of options. There are lots of installers in Las Vegas.
I think that there's people out there who are like, listen, I need to keep the Las Vegas sun out of my house from time to time so that I'm not spending $1 bajillion on AC. I'm pretty sure that exists. So get that light control as much as you can first, and then you decide which TV solution is best for you and what screen solution if you decide to go in that direction. Because if you want 150 160-inch screen, then we don't have, this is not your recommendation anyways. Yeah. We have another recommendation for you for that. So we need a little bit more information, but at the same time, I think there needs to be some more conversations with your cousin and your ex-wife, I guess.
Language, commas.
Commas are important. All right. Adam has a full home theater in a different room, so he's not concerned about his living room setup having a full theater setup anymore. But that said, he'd still appreciate keeping surround sound, but his wife and kids need it to be very easy to use, and they weren't fans of his Harmony remote, so that isn't the solution, which is great because Harmony's dead. The TV is above a fireplace, and he used to have a pair of tower speakers along with surround speakers at the back of the room and a subwoofer all powered by his Onkyo TXNR 609 receiver. His wife never liked having the tower speakers in there, so on our advice, he got a KEF speaker bar, a while ago, and it's worked very nicely in his room. So we're seeing a picture here. It's above it's right above the TV. The TV's right above the fireplace mantle, and the speaker sits on the mantle.
That's right.
There are bookshelves to the left and right of the fireplace and his TV. I'm sorry, but not bookshelf speakers.
No, not bookshelf
just
speakers.
Bookshelves.
Bookshelves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are bookshelves. Okay, sorry. His Onkyo receiver lives in the left bookshelf, and he has run all of his in-wall speaker wires to that location. He's pretty sure his wife would prefer if the receiver could be hidden behind the doors at the bottom of the bookshelf, though. The problem is that there's a backboard on the bookshelves, and with the doors closed, there's only 13 inches of space front to back, so his Onkyo simply cannot fit in there. You should get a NAD.
Sure, that'll fix it.
You just need to brace that shelf a little bit. He is willing to make a cutout in the backboard inside the doors at the bottom, though. In fact, he figures that would be a lot better for ventilation. But of course, there's only a little bit of space from the backboard of the bookshelf unit to its actual wall. So any receiver that goes behind those doors would still need to be as close as 13 inches front to back or less, if possible. Because you got to remember, the 13 inches also includes the speaker wire coming off the back of the thing.
There's that too,
or
yes.
connections for your HDMI and everything else. So your receiver, just the physical size of the receiver isn't enough.
That's right.
You have to actually have extra space on top of that. The issue he's having is that his current Onkyo receiver is old enough that it can't pass through 4K or any form of HDR. It has HDMI 1.4 ports only, so he's been forced to plug his Apple TV 4K directly into the TV and then use HDMI ARC and HDMI CEC. His wife and kids only want to use the Apple TV 4K remote, and if everything goes just right, it does have the ability via HDMI CEC to power on the TV and the AV receiver and then control the volume, which is all they really need. But of course, everything does not go just right most of the time, so it's been a pain.
Yeah.
So his question: should he just get a new receiver? He wants to keep the price as low as possible, but he needs 5.1 max. His wife and kids would still only ever want to use the Apple TV 4K remote, but with a new receiver that can pass through 4K and HDR, maybe that would work a bit more reliably with the Apple TV 4K plugged into the AV receiver and not having to use HDMI ARC anymore? Question mark.
It's a bit tough because we still can't guarantee that it's going to work flawlessly. It should work a bit better. Because relying on ARC via CEC is definitely questionable. It should work a bit better. I like your idea of making the cutout in the back of the backboard for ventilation if we're having that. So I'm going to point you.
What's it venting to? Just the wall? I mean, there
but
can't be
having any sort of place where air can go in and out is better than just behind the doors with nowhere.
I'll be honest with you, I prefer a solution that involves no AV receiver.
Well, he's going to be asking about that next. But just to finish the question, for a low price, you go over to accessories for less. You can get a Denon S670H for $280 right now. It is 13.4 inches, including the volume dial on the front and the binding posts on the back. So if you did make that cutout in the backboard, it will be protruding a little bit, but not very much. And it's small enough front to back that it should be able to sort of fit in there if you do make a cutout in that backboard of your bookshelf unit for it.
I need to look something up before I can do this thing. Hold on. And go like that. And where's the size of this thing?
It's in the images there, but 13.4 inches from front to back, including the volume dial and the binding posts on the back of the thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to fit. I'll be honest with you.
It can still live on the top if it needs to.
So should he proceed with finding a way to stuff the AV receiver behind the doors at the bottom of the left bookshelf unit? I don't think it's going to fit. It's
definitely not going to fit with the doors closed and the backboard still in place. That is for sure.
I don't know how much room is coming off that backboard. I guess that's the thing. Because again, it's not just the size of the receiver. And you're like, oh, well, I can just use a bare wire connection. Well, you're going to have to buy right angle HDMI cables too. Which is fine. You can do
exist.
that. Yeah. Just make sure that they turn in the right way because sometimes they do. They often aren't adjustable. But you're going to have to be a little careful about your cable management. And should he actually forget all about that AV receiver and his current speakers and subwoofer and just replace all of it with a sound bar instead? The KEF speaker bar already kind of looks like a sound bar, but will any reasonably affordable sound bar be able to match KEF's sound quality that they've gotten used to?
I don't want you to get a sound bar.
I don't
want you to do it.
I don't want you to get a sound bar, but I also want this not to be. I don't want there to be a receiver in this situation.
Okay.
I also think you should just get rid of just forget about surround sound. I honestly do. I think 2.0, 2.1, if you've got it, is fine. We've talked a little bit about, many different solutions that involve, an amp with some subwoofers that are, or a subwoofer output that automatically engages an 80 hertz crossover.
Or just the pair of self-powered speakers that have a subwoofer output on them.
Exactly. And there's a ton of those. And I mean, but he's already got the speaker wire run. So, and that feels like it makes it a little bit easier to do this. Bookshelf speakers in a little sub someplace, I feel like is the solution for this problem.
I'm not against that. That could be the way to go here, especially for the simplicity, right? You're not going to be running into CEC stuff with that because it's just the audio output of the TV going straight into the pair of self-powered speakers. The self-powered speakers handle having the subwoofer connected directly to them, so you're not dealing with any of that stuff. And
you can do it the same way with like a small amp, like a small amp / processor that just takes the
something
RCA
like a WIM
input.
Something like a WIM amp could be the way to go here because that's very similar. It's a similar idea, except that now you're connecting your own speakers to it. But a WIM amp could be the solution there too.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Okay.
Then you don't ever have to worry about all this other stuff. And plus, I mean, it actually might end up being more expensive than buying this receiver, but you're now not cutting up your bookshelves. You're not, trying to find.
And you can definitely hide that WIM amp behind the doors, and then
anywhere.
You put the app, the WIM app, onto your wife's phone, and now she can send music directly to those speakers in the living room without having to turn anything else on. That might be a winning combo.
Yeah, I think so. Tony. So unfortunately, we did not manage to solve Tony's Apple TV 4K issues. So he's going to send his Apple TV 4K to me. No?
Did you already get that one that was sent? I don't remember if that arrived.
I did get it.
Okay.
Yes, I think we talked about that last week.
Could be.
Actually, yes, we did talk about it last week. And yes, it was in the box waiting for me when I got over there. So yes, thank you to the person who sent that. Mm-hmm. As a reminder, he's got an Apple TV 4K plugged into his Onkyo RZ50 receiver, and the receiver is connected to a Samsung QN90A TV. Both the receiver and the TV are using their eARC ports, which really shouldn't matter in this case. No problems watching anything on his Apple TV 4K. He also enjoys being able to play Atmos music from the Apple Music app on the Apple TV 4K. But when he's using his Apple TV 4K to play music, he wanted to be able to turn off his TV. Since the Apple TV 4K is plugged into his AV receiver, he figured it would work, but the Apple TV 4K always powers off if he turns off his TV. Naturally, we said to turn off HDMI CEC, and then to also turn off the power-saving features in the Apple TV 4K so that when they go into standby a short time after detecting the TV was off. But that didn't work. Strangely, the Apple TV 4K now goes into standby after a seemingly random amount of time after the TV is turned off. Well, that's better. It's like roulette. Sometimes it's almost instantaneous. Other times it stays on for maybe 30 seconds, but then goes into standby. So, in the other ideas, does he honestly just need to leave his Samsung TV on all the time, even when all he wants to do is have music playing in the background from his Apple TV 4K? Yes.
I mean, that's the sure way.
I don't know what else to tell you, man. It's like you've tried the stuff that we've said. I still feel like maybe there's a setting someplace that's being missed.
Well, I think that HDMI CEC is on in some other device that is connected to this system, because with HDMI CEC, every single device has to have it turned off for it to actually be turned off.
I mean, we're talking about any game console,
cable box, any other streaming device,
any of that stuff. Yeah.
Everything has to have HDMI CEC turned off. So maybe he's heard what we said and he turned HDMI control, HDMI CEC off in the Apple TV 4K, which any reasonable person would make them think, I have now turned HDMI CEC off for the one device that I want it to be off. Any reasonable person would do it. I cannot possibly blame you. I'm here to tell you that every device in your entire signal chain has to have CEC turned off for it to actually be turned off. And even then, it'll still punch through some commands once in a while because it does. I've turned CEC off in everything in my parents' setup. I can still turn the volume up and down on their Marantz receiver using any remote in the system. So CEC is not entirely gone. But it's bizarre how that works. That's the only ththing left to try. Otherwise, you're just leaving that Samsung TV on all the time. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, unfortunately. The other thing he had tried was using his iPad to send Apple Music, either directly to his Onkyo receiver or to the Apple TV 4K using AirPlay 2 in either case. But he wants Atmos Music to be available. His iPad can play back Atmos Music either on its own or through Apple AirPod earphones, but it never seems to send Atmos Music via AirPlay 2, even though we said it should technically be possible. He has set his iPad's Dolby Atmos settings to always on. but it still doesn't work over AirPlay 2. So again, any other ideas?
Yeah, so I mean, I know it's not going to work sending it directly to your Onkyo receiver, because the Onkyo receiver's implementation of AirPlay 2 definitely does not support sending Atmos to it. So that one is out. Sending it to the Apple TV 4K, I'm not sure why that isn't working.
I wonder if he's got an older version of an iPad or something.
I mean, it's one that can do it itself anyway, so technically it should be possible. The honest answer is I don't know entirely why that isn't working going to the Apple TV 4K. Going to the Onkyo receiver, I know it's not going to work there because the Apple the AirPlay 2 support definitely says for the Onkyo that it's 2-channel only. But to the Apple TV 4K, I don't know why that absolutely isn't
Call
working.
Apple support and good luck, sir.
Yeah.
God bless.
Yeah.
May the odds ever be in your favor.
Sorry, I wish I had a better answer.
I wish we had
better.
But Travis.
Yeah. No, we didn't
Travis,
get all of. We didn't do C on the last.
Oh, there's a C.
There's a C.
Yeah, I did. I scrolled past it.
You did.
On one other issue, whenever he first starts a new movie on Netflix or starts a new song in his Apple Music or on his Apple TV 4K, there's a short delay before the audio actually starts playing. Hello, HDMI handshake. The video will show up on screen, or the timer in Apple Music will start going, but the audio is silent for somewhere between a half a second and 2 seconds. There's no sync issue, just a short, annoying silence before the audio kicks in. Is there something he can do to fix that? You start the music and then you rewind the song to the beginning again.
And that's annoying. That's exactly what he's saying he doesn't want to happen.
I understand.
Sounds
like a handshake. To me, it sounds like the handshake.
It's
thing.
Anytime the audio format is actually changing.
Right.
Because I mean the quote unquote fix, the quote unquote
RZ50.
He's got an RZ50, yeah. The quote unquote fix to this is to set the audio output of the Apple TV 4K to never change.
That's right.
The problem is he wants Atmos when it's Atmos. He wants 2-channel when it's 2-channel. He wants 5.1 when it's 5.1. So it is changing. That's the problem. Because I mean, you can fix it. You can fix it to always output everything in a Dolby Digital 5.1 container, and it will never change from that container. And then you won't get these dropouts ever. But it also means that Atmos is no longer Atmos and 2-channel is no longer 2-channel.
So just think about it that way. That what's really happening is you tell the Apple TV 4K to play something, right? And the video output has not changed, right? The video output resolution is the same as it was when you were on the menu screen or whatever it was doing, right? But the audio switches from whatever audio format the menu system is in or whatever you're watching before to the new audio format that the music is in. And that change takes a second or up to 2 seconds for everything to sink in and start playing again.
Yeah.
And that is just there's like should it take this long? No.
I mean, that's what the HDMI quick media switching is all about, but not everything in your system supports that at this point. So,
yeah. So that's kind of what's happening here, and the solution is, as Rob said, to only ever send out one audio format.
But then he doesn't get what he wants. So.
You don't get what you want. So not all relationships are perfect.
Right.
And your relationship with your Apple TV 4K has some bumps, but I think that if you just learn to compromise a little bit in your expectations of it and realize that it's trying its best, it really is. It's doing its best to try to give you what you want.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not failing. It's just, you just got to remember that it too has needs, and that you should be more understanding of those needs.
So I know we're up to the 2-hour mark, but I really want to hit 2 more if we can, and they're both short. So
as long as they're short, because I'm a hungry boy. Cycled like 30 miles this morning. Travis recently moved into a new house. He kept all of his Had you won a house in St. Petersburg? You can do lots of renovations if you want. He kept all of his previous home theater equipment, which never had any issues before. The only new item is a 65-inch Samsung S90C QD OLED TV. His AV receiver is a Denon X2700H. His speakers are Martin Logan Motion XT with an SVS PB12 and SD subwoofer, and he has a custom-built gaming PC. Everything is plugged into the same monster cable surge protector. In the new house, there are intermittent pops and clicks coming through the speakers. Never happened before in the old place. He's noted that if the AC unit in an adjacent room is running, the problem is definitely worse, so he's thinking the cause of the pops and clicks in the house is electrical wiring. Do we agree? And if so, would the battery backup UPS solve the problem? He's looking at either APC BGM 1500 or the CyberPower CP15PFC, both of which have pure sine wave output and are suitable for use with power factor corrections power supplies. Should he get either of those, or will the pops and clicks still happen even after spending the money in this case? Well, first things first, you should have your electrical looked up. Something's not grounded or something.
I mean, just from the information you provided as email, we can't conclusively diagnose. We definitely can't. It's not out of the question. You're right that it's not out of the question that the problem is coming from something in the electrical wiring, especially if you super duper easily notice it when your dryer kicks on, you're running a vacuum cleaner, whatever it is.
Vacuum cleaner is the big one. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, anytime some other electrical device, fans elsewhere, lighting, microwave oven, whatever it is, it's like, okay, every time I turn something on, I get a pop or a click that's like, okay, yeah, that's probably coming through your electrical wiring in the house, which means you have a grounding issue. There's something not right about the grounding in your house. That is what is supposed to shunt all of those types of interferences, and it means the grounding of this new house is not correct. And ideally, yes, you would have an electrician come and look at that. That is the real thing. Will some kind of battery backup UPS solve this problem? No. Not these types. These types are not going to solve that problem for you. There is a type of battery backup that should solve this particular issue if all of your devices are plugged into it, and that is a fully inline battery backup. Which, Tom can recommend. What was that IO Gear one? Which is not outlandishly expensive. It's way more expensive than either of the ones you pointed to here. It's like, $750, $800, that IO Gear one. But the inline battery backup means that your devices that are plugged into it are never getting their power from the mains. They are only ever getting the power from the battery. The battery is just continuously in use. The devices are drawing their power from the battery of the unit, and then the battery is just recharging itself constantly while the mains are there. And of course, if it's a blackout, you're going off the battery itself and have limited time because the battery will eventually run out. But inline units, as you can imagine, since the battery is constantly being used and running, they are considerably more expensive than what is called online battery backup, which is the battery is just sitting there unused until the power goes out, and then
you can set the IO Gear to be that way as well. If you can, want.
Yeah, it's an option. But for this problem, that's the only type of battery backup that would help you, because now you're not drawing the power from the mains, you're drawing the power from the battery in all cases. Yes. And that should eliminate this problem. However, you are going to kill that IO Gear faster than if you had it plugged into a good electrical source, because all of those pops and glitches, they're all little surges that are going through your house's wiring, and it is going to kill the surge protection and the battery of that unit relatively quickly versus having proper electrical wiring. So the long-term solution is get an electrician in.
Yes. Galen has a 5.1.2 speaker configuration. He's using SVS Prime Series for the 5 floor-level speakers, along with B&W 610 sub and a pair of Sonos in-ceiling speakers. His AV receiver is a Pioneer Elite LX302, and his TV is a 75-inch LG SJ8570 LCD. Both of these were purchased back in 2017. He uses an Oppo 203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player to play discs. Mm-hmm. He went by the diagrams and the visuals that show up when he runs MCACC. Not our favorite room correction, but this is what you have, so it's what we're going to go with. Mm-hmm. He chose 5.1.2 for the number of speaker channels. He set everything to small with 100 hertz crossover frequency. He set surround backs to null, and the height speakers label he set to top rear, since that looks closest to where his in-ceiling speakers are physically located relative to his seats. The other options were rear height, Dolby front, Dolby surround, front height, top front or top middle. He set zone 2 to no, speaker B's to no, and biamp to no. Mm-hmm. Okay. When he goes to play an Ultra HD Blu-ray that for sure has an Atmos soundtrack, his surround and in-ceiling speakers are literally silent. They don't make any sound at all, only his front 3 speakers play. The test tones definitely play out of all 5.1.2 speakers when he does the setup, so it's not a physical connection problem or broken amplifiers or something. So can we help him fix this problem? Let's start with relabeling those things to top middles. Let's go with that.
Yeah. I honestly, it's rare that I've seen the ability to set when you have only two overhead
know
speakers.
That you could do that.
Yeah, to anything rear. That's a little unusual.
You could usually do front heights.
Oh yes,
or top middles.
Or top middles. Yeah. Front heights, top fronts, top middles, and then the Dolby upward firing fronts is typically an option. It's kind of rare to be able to even set them to rear heights or top rear. I would recommend that you set them to top middle as the label, but I don't know if that's going to fix this problem. If the option is there, it's kind of weird that would be it, but I would try it because that's free. Go ahead and try setting it to top middle for sure. That might fix the issue.
And the other thing is to make sure that because I don't have a lot of experience with, I haven't used a Pioneer in forever, with making sure that you've got the right surround mode selected.
Yes, the listening mode for sure.
Yeah, because that usually I would guess would be the case. Because a lot of times you're like, I'm only my front 3 speakers are playing. Is it your front 3 or is it your front 2? And you can somehow set this to stereo. And not on purpose. Maybe it defaults that way to stereo when you're on whatever input you put for your movie thingy or whatever.
Yeah.
So for your Ultra HD player. So maybe that's it. You can also check I would think that many of the discs, every disc I ever had, defaults to the highest surround sound that's available.
That's not always true.
There.
Sometimes in the disc menu, you have to choose the Atmos soundtrack
over the Dolby surround or something. But it's not like any of them default to stereo.
No, I haven't seen discs default to stereo. But there is one other thing in the signal chain that has settings, and that's your Oppo 203.
That's true.
Because your Oppo 203 player, first of all, if you want Atmos to ever play, you have to turn off secondary audio. Secondary audio is the thing that lets the feature that was basically never used of the director's commentary getting overlaid on top of the actual movie soundtrack. And they quickly found out it's like, oh no, you need to make the movie soundtrack a lot quieter if you want to hear the director. So it just became a separate soundtrack on the disc that you selected. And they basically never used that secondary audio feature. But secondary audio is on by default in every disc player. And with it on, Atmos plain doesn't work. So that could be an issue. Make sure secondary audio is turned off for sure in your Oppo 203. And then the Oppo 203 has a whole bunch of its own audio settings because it can do all of the decoding internally and then output the sound already pre-decoded. And you don't want that, particularly for Atmos. You do not want that. So just make sure that your Oppo 203 is actually outputting bitstream audio, that it is not doing any type of internal decoding, and that it does not have secondary audio turned on, which, like I say, is on by default. So that might be part of the issue here for sure. So doing all of those settings changes in your player and in your AV receiver, this should get working.
All right, who do we have left?
We have Ilango, whose question looks insanely long, but that's because he sent in many, many photos, and I chose a selection of them to go along because he has a bit of a story to tell us about his basement reno next week. And then Andrew is also on the list for next week.
All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Bill for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 133 patrons over at patreon.com.
That's right, Bill. Thank you so much for the PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thank you to our 133 patrons over there.
Then we want to thank Infinite Gary and Ilango for sending some movie codes for us to test out.
That's right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Ilango.
Thank you, George and Dan, for sending AV receivers to me, and Dan for this super cool cheese board.
That is right. Thank you, George. Thank you, Dan.
And Galen for talking us up to SVS.
That's right. Thank you, Galen. We appreciate that.
Ilango, we give thanks because he is going to let me use some of his photos on AV Gadgets, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Ilango. And there are many, many, many to choose from.
That's right. And we've got notes of gratitude from Ryan, Dan, Mohsen, Chris, Travis, Karl, Jack, Drew, Ryan, Infinite Gary, Dazz, Ilango, and John. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, it's a long list of names, but I'll say them one more time. Ryan, Dan, Mohsen, Chris, Travis, Karl, Jack, Drew, Ryan, Infinite Gary, Dazz, Ilango, and John. Thank you so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We super duper appreciate them. If you were annoyed last week by the tease of not knowing what the heck I bought, all these clues about these members of the 2 Hour Plus Club now confirmed. There's your clue, folks.
Clues.
Mr. Police, I gave you all the clues, so,
All right. If you want to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com.
Mm-hmm.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.